I'm back. This is a long ass trip. 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 I'm back. This is a long ass trip.
really encountered it and saw it start to creep into TV and movie was originally the book series Wheel of Time from it was when it first started out, it was amazing because you're getting these books that were like 1,000 pages long, which back then was like that was a big deal. Like most books were a couple hundred to 500 pages.
3 to 4 to 500.
Yeah. So to get this huge volume, you're just like, yes, I'm going to sink into this. And the stories in the first like 5-6 books, you were covering like months of adventure. And then somewhere along the way, the author started to go more and more into like he was splitting the story off into those telling different people's like storylines at the same time. And by the time you'd get done with a book, you'd realize that the time that he had encapsulated in that was like 2 days worth of time. And the story that you had gotten on each individual character wasn't complete in that book. Each one of those stories had not been finished. It had just been advanced a little bit. And it started to happen more and more. And by like the 12th book, I remember reading, I don't know if it was the 12th book, but it was somewhere way down in the line. I read the book and I got done. I'm like, we didn't even get through like a whole day in that book. And it was like 1,000 pages long because he's going off into like one character is worried about the dress that she's wearing and whether or not it makes her look good. I'm like, I didn't need that storyline. Like that.
Yeah,
that
it just doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue it doesn't matter to you.
Right. But at the same, and that's what people were saying at the time. They're like, oh, well, it shows, that character's thought process and what she's, concerned with and what makes her think or behave in certain ways. And now we have a better understanding. But I'm just like, I was left scratching my head going, yeah, no, I didn't need that. Like, I was here for the adventure, not for the mental thought process behind it. Kind of a thing. But
I guess it depends on the story they're telling too.
Was just that I remember seeing that progress in that series of books, and that was in the 90s. And then I started to see that happening, developing into what it is now in the entertainment industry in general. Movies, TV, games, and it's kind of like, oh man.
Or it's like they try to overanalyze everything in the story itself, like in the movie or TV show, like it's everything in universe tries to overanalyze everything to the point where it has to be like the villain can't just be a simple one-dimensional villain anymore. Now it has to be like this super in-depth villain that has motives or was once good or this and that. Like you can't just have a fun, like for instance, like just old school.
It's not even that the villain can't be one-dimensional. Yeah. He's not allowed to be three-dimensional. He has to have He has to have his own show explaining his childhood.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Well, and what's really weird, too, is, and I've seen this with a couple of things and heard of it with more, where you have a villain, and they're very clearly the villain. It's like they're not like, oh, they were a good person or they were one of the heroes and now they've gone bad or anything like that. It's like, no, they're the villain through and through, but... then the show or the movie tries to make them it almost tries to endear you to the villain, and it's just like
they try to the story tries to or the writer tries to justify the villain to the audience when
and you're just like, but they're the bad guy, they're doing horrible things, why are you writing this as if we should be liking and empathizing with this person? Like, it's like, that's not to say, like, that's not to necessarily dehumanize the villain, but at the same point, it's like, why are you specifically writing them in this way to make us want to like them? It really doesn't make any sense.
Well, because I wanted to explore the idea that no villain ever thinks they're a villain, and I want you to start thinking the same way.
I'm trying to. Yeah. That's the thing is, I'm a
that's
little.
What the writer wants, but even so, it's just kind of like.
I don't know. Yeah. Just a lot of times in
media
today.
How you go about it also has a big effect.
Agreed. A lot of time in media today, you kind of see like it's always. You rarely see things nowadays where the villain is like, oh, he's evil and enjoys being evil type thing. Like nowadays, it's always the villain thinks they're the good guy of the story.
It's Loki.
Well, I mean, and I would say sometimes you can still write a story that does that well. Like, what was it?
I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that that's really all you see today versus like something of
versus an actual I'm evil. But why? Because I want to be evil. Like,
I don't have time to explain to you why I'm evil. I need to kill you and move on.
I mean, there's that. Okay.
Like for instance, like I'm going to use
Oh.
No, like in Transformers, you have Megatron. Like his whole goal is literally to take over the universe, and he's power hungry. Like he doesn't like. I mean, there are some versions that see himself as a good guy, but generally, at least the original is he's just a bad guy. Like he wants to become a conqueror and ruler and all that. Like you don't really have that anymore. Where like the guy's just evil. Like he just wants to do it because he can.
I mean, look at like.
Or he wants to take over. He wants
Aladdin.
to rule.
Or Jafar. It's like he wants to be evil. He wants to take over and rule everything. He's a bad guy through and through.
By the way, we're alive
so what
now.
You're saying is we need a storyline arc just for him explaining how he got there.
Yeah, about how he was just this misunderstood kid, and it's not really his fault he's evil. And no. and that's one thing too I have an issue with, where it's like, sure, if someone is mistreated as a kid, they have a bad childhood, etc. Sure,
Magneto's a good
for them, but once you become an adult,
that.
you're responsible for your own actions. It might suck that you had shit that might have pushed you in that direction, but you are still in control of your own body and your own actions. You can choose to be who you want to be.
Holy crap, we have an active chat right now.
If you choose to be bad, if you're like, I'm going to kill people or I'm going to torture people or do bad stuff here, that's on you.
So our right now we have Victor Wolfong and Tilm29 in the chat. Victor Tilm29 saying they are treating the villain as the victim because victim mentality sells. I assume he meant sells, but he says sales. Victor says, I really like Magneto for this reason. He has a good balance. Yeah, because Magneto is...
Yeah.
Like, Magneto is essentially, like, he wants to, make mutants, not just equals. He wants them to be the dominant. Like, that's the evil side. He wants them to be the dominant over humans. And he goes about it the wrong way. But he comes from a place of good, and he, obviously came from that, he was a Jewish German in a concentration camp. The Nazis abused him, killed his mother, and all that. It's like, so, like he has that, the victim, because he is a victim, but what he doesn't realize is he's then victimizing others in his quest for, his evil quest.
Well, I think that's actually one of the few really good examples of them taking kind of like a, there's an end goal that's beneficial for all, but how you get there can be interpreted totally different by two people that are looking at the same problem. And I think they do a good, that's one storyline they do a good job of showing just how different people can approach it, the same problem, and trying to get to that end state. But you don't see that. I'd say that's rare.
I would also say too with Magneto, I would say Magneto's end goal is that he wants mutants to be safe. Just based on what he's seen, based on how he grew up, he determines that, well, to keep mutants safe, I have to make them dominant over the humans because otherwise we won't be safe. Because again, that's his mentality of how he grew up, what he saw being in the concentration camps. He's like, we have to be dominant, otherwise they're going to go and come after us.
Yeah, this is probably a bad analogy, but to me, it's kind of like the idea of us proponents of AI and those against AI. And some people say, you feed an AI all this information and say protect us, and it comes up with a conclusion. Well, the best way to protect you is to wipe you guys out because you're going to kill each other.
Speaking of which, do you guys hear about Tesla, Elon Musk? They're building a robot, a humanoid robot that
not building. They built.
Oh, they built it.
Yeah,
but it's going to do. It's called Optimus, and it's going to do menial tasks and stuff. But they made it so that a human being could still overpower it. And I'm reading this article, I'm just thinking, well, that's just Prime. It's like, what the?
Well,
This isn't
to
gonna
be
go
honest,
bad.
there's a difference between a robot and an AI.
That's
like,
true.
You know,
Mhm.
because
We
Elon
use
Musk
robots
has
all the
been,
damn
is
time
one of the
in the last.
people who's been against AI creation since like day one. So
Also, like
and
we've been using robots for decades now.
I
I've worked
I
with
know
robots.
this is getting off on a different tangent, but I'll just throw this out there. I think there's something to be said for the dangers of AI and
Mhm.
our current, not just us, as in like United States, but I mean the world. AI is being militarized right now, and that's just super dangerous. Because I mean,
Mhm.
if you're in doubt of that, just think of like a law in your country that was originally written for for the benefit of the society, but then you get people come in charge who can then interpret that law and use it against the betterment of the society. And that's exactly the same thing that can happen with AI, which is, we
I mean, the
create it
whole point of an
with
AI
these
is
checks
that
and
they're
balances, and it's meant to do good. And then somebody comes along and goes, but if I remove this and I check this block, guess what? Now it'll do my bidding, regardless of what everyone else thinks. And
I
that's
mean,
when
Yeah.
we're in trouble.
the thing is with AI is that they're susceptible to the same stuff that humanity, like mentally speaking, they're susceptible to the same egos and problems that humans are. If
I
we're
would
talking
say
about
even
full
more
artificial,
because they don't have the ability
intelligence.
to kind of like
Because they don't have the
know the
moral
opposite, if
center
that makes
and
sense.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
make the argument like they don't have the moral center and the emotion to
Yeah,
kind of differentiate. But
logic can lead you to the wrong conclusions if you
Mhm.
only rely on logic.
Mhm.
I would compare it to a tool like a hammer. A hammer can either build things or a hammer can tear things apart. It's
Right.
more about the person who's wielding the hammer
exactly,
than the
and that's
hammer
the thing
itself.
is, who's to say
But
all
if the
AIs are
hammer
going to be the
starts
same?
wielding itself, then what happens? That's the problem.
No, it's not just that. It's also like, what if you have the AI, but this AI is a bit more cold and calculative and a little evil compared to like AIs can be different just like humans are. That's I think also something.
Oh, it's the AI is going to adopt whatever the society norms are for who created it. So you like right now, if you were to take AI that the U.S. has created and examine it versus AI that Russia has created for military use on both sides, you would see dramatic differences in the decision-making process of the AI just because of the background that the programmers came from and how they interpret information and how to make decisions. So that's where you're just going to constantly see this this disparity between two AIs and how they approach and solve problems.
Yeah. In the chat, Tone29 says, yeah, regarding what you were talking about villains earlier, yes, there are rare cases like Mr. Freeze where it can work because of his wife Nora saying like where the villain is a villain because he was a victim and all that. Victor Wolfong says, I made Megatron a Nazi in the Halo former. So Transformers crossover. Victor Wolfong says, Mr. Freeze shouldn't be a bad guy. I think he'd make a great anti-hero. Yeah, but he is a bad guy.
That's the entire way that he's always been written. Although
I gotta
that
bail
being
out here,
said,
guys. I'll see you later.
with
See ya.
Mr. Freeze,
All right, see ya.
with Mr. Freeze, I do sometimes really wonder because it's like we know Bruce is brilliant. I do wonder then why he's not like, hey, by the way, Mr. Freeze, tell you what, I'll help you if you help me. You help me take out some of these bad guys and take some of the load off me. I'll go and help you. I'll work on something to try to save your wife. It's like, why wouldn't he do that? Like, through the power of science, I've just removed one of the big bads from the city.
Yeah.
Because that's
why I liked about the Arkham games.
He wants money to fund his research. That's it.
Also,
And if he can go, hey, by the way, Wayne Enterprises at your service.
Yeah, it could be like a whole rehabilitation program. But
Yeah.
that's what I liked about the Arkham games is because in the Arkham games that had Mr. Freeze in them, so Arkham City and Arkham Knight. I think Arkham Origins did too through a DLC, but in Arkham City, in Arkham Knight, you have Freeze more or less as an ally. because Batman's like reasoning with him instead of fighting. I mean, you do have a fight,
so
a
it's
boss
just
fight with
punching.
him, but most part it's reasoning with him and saying, "Hey, look, you're a smart guy. I'll help you out if you help me out." Film 29 said there should be no full dependent on robots or AI. Victor Wolfgang says humans are basically natural AIs in organic robot bodies, and not every human is smart. So why should every AI be smart? I guess the difference is the AI would have not access. I mean, you can say humans all have access to too, but the difference is an AI can absorb the information instantaneously and actually retain that information, whereas some humans can't.
Mm.
But should we get on one of the topics? On
Never.
that going to be? So what do we start with first? Robin being gay?
Sure.
Alright, well, Robin's gay now. I told you guys, but we weren't live when I said this. I found out about Robin being gay through my mother. She was telling me how she heard in an article she was reading that Robin is gay. And she goes, but he was always gay. Which I thought was hilarious because, I mean, yeah, whenever... That was like a running joke for decades, like that Robin was gay. Like, because the outfit he's wearing. Especially the Burt Ward of Robin from the 1966 Adam West Batman show, where he's wearing the little underwear, the tiny cape.
But by the way, we covered in a past video on where the whole like why are they wearing underwear on the outside of their clothes kind of thing. Just for a reiteration, they actually came originally from they were basing the costumes off of the masked wrestlers. So the thing of it is, when with the outfits they had, they were pretty much wearing just like pure spandex, which doesn't really hide much, especially right
It also
around
helps
the
with
groin area.
coloration wise, like
Coloration wise, but they wanted to wear shorts so that they weren't essentially going and flashing every single person who looked at them. So that way it kind of just makes everything a little bit more decent. So that's where that whole thing actually came from. And then from there, it just became the style.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. Burt Ward apparently was actually gay. Film 29 points
Who?
out. Burt Ward, who played Robin, Dick Grayson Robin in the 66 show. Victor corrects me saying that he's bi. There's a difference. Yes, I know there's a difference. But okay, so he's bi instead of gay? I mean, still... I know. By the way, I should clarify, this is the Tim Drake version of Robin, that, although he's not Robin anymore, he's been Red Robin for the better half of 2 decades. But yeah, this is Tim Drake Robin that we're talking about, that they've now made bisexual, the same way they did What's-from-Face, Bobby Drake, Iceman. In this case,
no,
bisexual.
I thought they made him just pure gay.
No, they made Iceman pure gay.
Yeah.
What's-face?
Robin's
bi.
Dictating to him, you're gay. Well, he was like, I don't really know if that's correct. No, you're gay. It's like, I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, they have Robin, or Tim Drake Robin, so Red Robin is now gay, which... or bisexual, sorry, I keep saying that. Which, I mean, again, at this point, like, it doesn't surprise anyone that they're just retroactively doing this. And honestly, like, who cares what the sexuality of the character is? It shouldn't really matter. What matters is the character itself and the good story. Obviously, the thing is that they're doing it to get sales.
Well, it's like if you write the character well, realistically, no one's going to care if they're gay or bisexual or pan or they hit on everything that fucking moves or whatever. If you write the story well, people just go, well, yeah, that's the character. It's when you just go and throw shit in there and expect to be given praise and money because, well, you wrote a gay character. Woohoo, go you! It's like, who cares? It's like that's great that you have diverse characters now, but again, if you write a shitty diverse character, it's still a shitty character. You don't get bonus points, at least from most people in the real world, just because you wrote a diverse character. They're a shitty character, they're a shitty character. If they're a good character, they're a good character. Know the difference.
Alright, sorry about that. I just had to take a call real quick. But yeah, Victor in the chat saying, does anyone remember Tim's and Superboy's romantic relationship? I assume that's what be romantic means. Romantic. I guess I know they were friends, but I didn't really follow the later Teen Titans stuff. When it was Tim Drake, Robin, and Superboy.
I do also hate the idea that it's like, oh, if you have two guys that are friends, there has to be some kind of suppressed romance or sexual desire there. It's like, no, two guys can be friends without being physically attracted to each other or wanting a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
You know, just as two girls can be, or a guy and a girl. I've literally heard, or I haven't heard anyone actually say this to my face, but I've seen expressed that some people think that, oh, a guy and a girl can't be friends. There always has to be some type of sexual relationship there. Yeah. And it's just like just because for you everything is about sex doesn't mean it is for everyone.
Yeah, I having actually written recently written characters that are like a male and female character that aren't involved at all. They're just friends, like, and yeah, it's like, yeah, you can do that. It's like, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm an amateur schmuck writer, you know, like, what am I supposed, like, I'm not paid to do this professionally or anything like that. I'm just kind of testing it out, see if I can do it.
Exactly. If you were, you would have made the guy in that relationship, you would have made him trans, and then you might have made them both lesbians.
Don't joke about that.
You just gave away his plot twist, Cam.
No, yeah, well, don't joke, because there's a topic I wanted. Actually, Callsign would love this topic later that we discuss. But anyway, the whole thing with Robin being bisexual now, it goes again. It's one thing if they're like, okay, here's a new Robin, like there's a new Robin every freaking 5 years nowadays. So it's one thing if like, okay, here's the newest Robin, like the brand new Robin character, he's gay. Okay, fine. But you're taking Tim Drake, who is established to have, I mean, when I was reading him, you know, in the 90s, he had a girlfriend, like a steady girlfriend. There are even panels where it's like you see, because there's an issue where he's dying from something called the Clench, which was a story from the 90s as part of the Batman Legacy story arc, where Ra's al Ghul wants to poison the world with this super virus, which essentially would help him. It's kind of like yet another plot for him to, you know, cleanse the earth of a lot of people so that he can control it and build the world in his image.
Or what he sees as evil.
Right, and Tim is infected with this virus, and it like could flare up any minute and kill him. So they're actively searching for a cure. And because he knows he's dying, like at one point his mind goes to like a future, like, okay, he's marrying his girlfriend, and at the wedding the virus finally takes effect and kills him. Because it can hit at any time. It can be a week, it can be 5 years, it can be 20 years. So
it could be 300 years.
So it's like he doesn't know, and it kind of scares him. Like, okay, what if all's going well? He's had marrying his girlfriend, happiest day of his life, and then all of a sudden it kills him, you know, and like ruins her life too, and all that. Like, so yeah, like the dude was always straight. I mean, don't even get me started on Dick Grayson. He's like the greatest guy ever. But you know, Tim Drake was also like, you know, your typical kind of like, you know, he wants the American dream type thing. You know, having a wife and kids and stuff like that. Versus the other Robins who are either dead or focused focused on being a superhero. He was more focused on having a normal life. I think my StreamYard's froze. Streamlabs. I keep saying StreamYard. Hopefully they can hear me in the stream though. Tillman29 says, not only you could also tell that Burt Ward also enjoyed his role as Robin. And he says, Connor Kent and Tim Drake never kissed or slept with each other though. And Victor says, hence I like Pacific Rim's ending. Oh right, because Pacific Rim was another movie that they had tension, but at the end there was nothing happened. Yeah. I think they hugged. That was the most interaction they had with each other physically. Mentally, they mind linked whatever the drift that controlled the giant mechs. So
I never understood that whole idea though that you need two brains together that one brain can't do. It just was like. I mean, I know it's one of those things of okay, just it's
just a very Japanese
roll past it, but.
I think it was the way they talked about it was essentially piloting a giant body that way was too much for one human brain, so you needed two in order to compensate.
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm not
saying I'm not saying it makes sense, but it makes sense for the story. It's Japanese anime type thing. At least very much inspired by Japanese anime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a giant fucking mech, of course.
Right. Piloted via your brain, so as opposed to a control seat, like Gundam, just it's a control seat anyway. As long as you're trained, anyone can get in it. But Victor Wolfgang says bisexuality doesn't invalidate one type of relationship over another. Some bi people prefer men more, some prefer women more. I'm not saying that it does or doesn't. I'm just saying that it was never implied that he was, interested in both. I don't know. The point is, why does it matter? Why do they have to make a big fuss about change? He's gay. He's coming out as bi. He's coming out as bisexual.
Well, again, if it was something to where, hey, we're partially through this comic, and in the writing of the comic, naturally you have him exploring a new or additional relationship or something like that, that'll be one thing. But when they're coming out before the story is even fully out, and they're going, "This character is good."
No, it was revealed through Batman Urban Legends issue number 6, where he realized that he was bi.
It just. And that's the kind of shit I hate about those stuff. It's like if you write the character well. No one is ever going to go and say, "Oh, well, that's a gay character. Oh, that's so and so. Oh, yeah, here's some great stuff about him. Here's this. Oh, by the way, they're also gay." And da 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 da. It's when and as we're seeing with a lot of the writers nowadays, these characters are made into caricatures. That the only interesting thing about them is their newfound sexuality or whatever else, as if that's the only thing that even matters.
It's also just like, you have a character that, Tim Drake was introduced in, I think the early 90s? Early 90s or maybe late, like 89, 90 or something. I'm blanking on the year, but he's a relatively newer Robin. He's the third Robin after Jason Todd was killed. And, he has we're going on 30 years now worth of history where he was just great. Like he dated, he had a girlfriend who was an immigrant from Russia originally, and I really didn't keep track post 2000 stuff, so I don't know. But then all of a sudden it's retroactive. You're changing it because you can, and because it's like as Tim29 points out in the chat, the sexual identity is being treated like a bad fashion statement.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. Like they're doing it exactly like, oh look, we need to be relevant. Here, let's make Robin gay.
You just kind of slap on any character and go, look, we're special, and it's like that's fine and all, but again, if you can't write a good character, it doesn't matter what their sexuality is. And I feel like that's where a lot of these writers are failing because they don't know how to write, or at least they don't know how to write those characters well in the circumstances and fights and conflicts they're getting into. It's like if you write good content, you could go and I fully maintain that you could write about pretty much any subject out there as long as you write the story well and everything in it flows into it, seems natural for the circumstances that you're writing about. No one's going to care whether your character is bi or gay or straight or they're a shapeshifter. They can change their gender at will, like physically. As long as you write the character well and you write the stories well, no one's going to care. I mean, you can have a character that they're they're able to go and shapeshift, and some days they shapeshift into a guy and they live like a normal guy would, and other days they shapeshift into a girl and they live like a normal girl does, and other days they're bi on Tuesdays as a guy and they're gay on every other Wednesday as the girl. Whatever, as long as you write the character well, all that will just flow into it.
Yeah, and also
But it's when all you can write about the character is their sexuality. It's like, this isn't porn. There's more to it than that.
well, as
If
we've
you wanna
said in
write
the
porn,
past, they
go write
turn
porn, that's fine.
they turn
But
the
in
characters
comics,
into
there's more.
caricatures because now that character is gay. That's their character. When that's not a
Yeah.
character, that's a caricature.
And
Also,
it's like, this isn't putting tags on your favorite porn video. The characters are supposed to be more than that.
right? Yeah, it's like here's gay
Right?
porn, straight porn. Yeah. Film 29 says Tim Drake was made as DC's way to thank Tim Burton for making the Batman film from '89 with Michael Keaton, who, by the way, is coming back as Batman as part of this Flash movie that's coming out sometime soon. I guess.
TM.
But yeah, like that's a good film, and that's Tim Drake was. I always liked Tim Drake Robin. I never. I mean, personally, I prefer Dick Grayson as character, but Tim Drake Robin was a great Robin, especially since he was Robin during the Nightfall story arc where Batman gets his back broken and Asbats takes over, and Batman has to take the mantle of the Bat back from him. Victor Wolfgang says positive representation in media is incredibly young in the grand scheme of things. In the grand scheme of things, yes, but in general, I would say no, because Star Trek TOS did it. Look at the bridge crew of Star Trek TOS. You had a Russian pilot, you had a Chinese pilot, a Russian navigator and operator. You had a black communications officer, Jewish captain.
Yeah, and didn't they have some gay and lesbian relationships in Voyager throughout the? I thought they did.
Well, you had the episode in TNG where they had the race that has no sex, where everyone's just. And they actually, it was funny because in that episode, that race, like if you start identifying as a specific sex, they would completely like your life was lost essentially. Like they would oust you and marginalize you, and it was a whole essentially a prejudice. It was disturbing.
I kind of miss the days of the old Star Trek just because back in the day, and this is just my take on it. It seemed like it was like it was definitely political. It was definitely social.
But they always used aliens to tell those.
Well,
it was never humanity.
That, but it was coming from a point of view of, hey, here is essentially a reflection of ourselves. And that was really what it was. We were seeing reflections of different parts of our society, different parts of what it is to be human. And kind of seeing these in stark contrast and going, hey, here's the stuff. If you take this too far, if you take that too far, if you try to go to extremes, if here's essentially what that would look like. But we can learn from it. We can be better than this. And the overall message was that, hey, we need to pull together, treat everyone respectfully and well. That's it. That's all you got to really do. And the general message was one of hope, of togetherness. Again, that's just my take on it. And I feel like even the new Star Trek, let alone other TV shows and comics that we're seeing too, have kind of lost that idea and are painted this picture of, oh, well, everything's terrible, but if you do what we say, you'll be slightly less terrible, but everything's still terrible.
Yeah, I mean, also one of the things of old Star Trek was they always used alien like not. It wasn't humanity. It wasn't the crew of the Enterprise. It was always another alien civilization that you were seeing modern day problems in, but through them. So it almost gave you like an outside perspective of a modern day problem. You know, like you had in the original series, you had the black and white and white and black aliens. Where like, literally, like their faces, like half their face is white, half their face is black, but one that was black and white, and the other was white and black.
Down the middle.
Yeah, and it's like they hate each other and all that. Like, you know, that was a take on racism, but you were viewing it like, okay, an alien species was dealing with it, not humanity, because humanity was supposed to have evolved, right? That was the whole point of Star Trek. Is this is a future where humanity has evolved, as Captain Picard put it in TNG. We've grown out of our infancy.
Yeah.
And so you were like seeing all these problems through alien species, and it kind of gave you an outside perspective, and it also made you think. And that was the whole thing. It's like it wasn't like, yes, there's obviously the morally right answer, but but in order to get to that answer, it made you think like on both sides, the argument on both sides. It was a diplomatic type thing. That's what Star Trek is always really good at. And nowadays, you know, like especially Star Trek nowadays, it's a complete mess where it's preachy and God, I mean they're coming out with Picard season 2, which I've only watched the first episode of Picard season 1, and that was enough.
I mean, it's because they're just throwing money at it, because they're like, this is honestly, I would see for at least these guys that don't care about writing a story, they just want to push whatever bullshit they're peddling.
Right.
They see it as propaganda.
No, because it is. Also,
we are funding our propaganda. We don't care about writing good stories. We don't care if people actually enjoy the content or not. We're putting it out there to try to get people to
What's
view.
really funny though is, have you ever seen William Shatner in the last like 2 years?
I have not.
Because the dude's freaking active. Like he acts
Really?
like he's in his 60s. You know, he's still active and out and about. He can like walk and shit. Whereas Patrick Stewart is got to be at least like 20 years younger. And
how old is Patrick Stewart?
I mean, we can quickly look that up. Patrick Stewart is 81 years old.
Wow.
And William Shatner is 90. There's a 9-year, 11-year difference. 9-year difference. I was right the first time. Yeah, it's not a huge difference, but apparently it is when you look at Patrick Stewart. The dude's old. He looks like he's William Shatner's age, and William Shatner looks like he's Patrick Stewart's age.
Bear in mind though, too.
He barely move.
There's a difference between what you'll appear like when you're in front of the camera for a prepared thing, and when
I'm not talking about look. The dude is like barely able to walk up steps old. Whereas William Shatner, in the last 2 years, I saw a clip of William Shatner on like a freaking bicycle.
I didn't think Patrick Stewart was having any like mobility problems or anything.
If you, I watched at least in that episode of Picard, like he just
Well, I mean,
I know it can be acting, but at the same time, it's like
character.
Yeah, but
that's one thing. I'm talking the actor.
I know in some interviews he doesn't exactly look like he's mobile.
I haven't heard of anything. I hope
Victor Wolfung says Patrick Stewart looks like a mummy. Kind of does. Telem29 says if they want LGBTI characters to work with the ones already there. We've been saying that for like years now. Give them a spotlight. You know, Deathstroke has a gay son, according to Telem29 saying, and that absolutely right, Telem. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. In that third words. Yeah, you have gay characters, but you're not using them. And okay, fine, you don't want to use that specific character. Make your own character. Create a new person.
No, don't do that.
The thing is, they want to use the popularity and the brand recognition of the existing characters. That's why they do it. Because the whole point is they're not trying to tell a story. They're not trying to be creative. I don't think they could if they wanted to. They want to use the character, whatever it is, was it Robin, Batman, Superman, whatever, as a platform to push their political agenda. political correctness nonsense. Their wokeism, whatever you want to call it. Victor Wolfgang says, with the setting I'm working on, a thing that's incredibly difficult for me to wrap my head around is how would the LGBT aspect of humanity evolve in 2,500 years? I mean, honestly, Cyberpunk kind of does this interestingly, where it's like, you just do whatever you want, you know? In the Cyberpunk franchise, in that future, which is it's not 2,500 years, but it's only like obviously it was based on like the future written in the 80s, so obviously it can be very different. But the whole point is, in that future, you have people just do whatever they want. Like, okay, yeah, you have straight people, you have gay people, you have bi people, but it's essentially kind of just do whatever you want, no one cares.
Yep.
Especially since you can completely mod out your body to the point where you were a guy, now you're a girl because of implants and cybernetics.
Or you could probably even have
you can mix and match pieces too.
You could probably even have it like, do you remember that one girl who had like she had removed her lower jaw and she was like doing her makeup? You could probably have like that for your genitalia. Just, hey, what do I feel like today?
I think they do. It's literally like Mr. Stud is literally like this dick implant in that universe. There's a quest that in the game where a guy is holding his crotch as it's smoking, and he's in pain, and you have to help him to your car and drive him to a Ripper dock because he has a malfunctioning Mr. Stud implant. So essentially, his dick is malfunctioning and about to blow up, and that's going to be taken out of context. But what I meant is about to it's going to burst into flames and explode, and a fiery death ball of madness. And yeah, so it's a very wacky quest, but like, yeah, you can. The whole point is like, yeah, you can have that. You can, in the character customizer, you can mix and match pieces. You have like a female-male hybrid or whatever. But I missed this comment. Tom29 says Midnighter and Apollo gay couple still superheroes accepted in the universe. So there we go. He just named two heroes that they could easily do stories about.
No.
They're not gonna do. Yeah, they're not gonna do it because again, that's not. They're not. Their goal isn't to make money based on good story and quality storytelling and writing.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, like the article here is referring to. Oh, no, it's not. This is literally a quote from the comic book panel saying that ever have a light bulb moment, Tim wondered. Tim Drake is having essentially. It's like, oh, I finally realized I'm bi. Now, I will say this. I have bi friends. It's not like a. It varies from person to person, totally. But my problem is just that you're taking a character that's pre-established and you're changing it because there's no lead up. There's no like, it was never explored or anything like that. Like, it was clear that dude, was not what you're saying he is, type of thing. It'd be like if they made Batman Asian.
Give them ideas.
Or if they made Selena Kyle a woman. I know, man. She is a woman. Sorry, just yep. Sorry, brain fart. But yeah, it's like,
my God.
Like where I've seen people flip out about the whole like Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn relationship. I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of always insinuated. Like that was always insinuated at least in the cartoon when Harley Quinn was first introduced. I don't know. Victor Wolfgang says, in my thing, due to generational augmentations, I'm thinking people are modular. Like someone can pop off their pecs and put on boobs and etc. But that sounds horrifying to write, like body horror. If you were here remember last week we were talking about Spider-Man becoming Man-Spider, so body horror is not really. And by that I mean like we're not like do body horror, by all means. Sometimes it could be really interesting. Just don't do it for the sake of body horror. You gotta actually, like, hear a story there about, like, essentially interchangeable parts on human beings. Depending on the story, it can work. I mean, Cyberpunk, in a way, does it. You know, as you mentioned, Cam, with the mouth, like, they remove their whole lower part of their head. Jaw. And parts of their nose, too, wasn't it? Or was it just, like, from the lower jaw? Gotta look at the image. But anyway, so yeah, Tim Drake now, bye. And the running joke is that, you know, Robin was always gay, so it doesn't really matter. Besides, no one's gonna be reading it. That's the thing. It's like you might have people. You might have people like picking it up just to make fun of it, but I doubt anyone's gonna actually buy this book. Excuse me, and that's why, like that's the whole reason they're doing this. It's like, oh look, we need to be relevant, so let's make this, like, whether it's to get outrage and therefore outrage causes relevancy and you know, uptick in popularity just because of, okay, look, they're talking, this thing is being talked about, that means we're getting money, or at the very least, you know, like ad revenue, whatever it is, through ad revenue, or they're buying the books to find out what the hell's going on, stuff like that. That's probably why they do it, alongside all the representation and diversity. Yep. Next up we have, oh boy, so Shang-Chi, the movie Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, their actor, whose name I'm blanking on, oh, it's right here, Simu Liu, I don't know how to pronounce that name, so I apologize, but he's essentially talking about how Shang-Chi is an aspirational hero, and it's going to be like one of the first times that people will have an Asian hero to look up to. Like one of the quotes is,
there haven't been any of those before.
Like, okay, so here's a quote. It's been tough, and this is from a different article, so I apologize, it's not on screen right now, but it is in the description. It's been a tough time for everybody regarding COVID-19 stuff, and I think sometimes it's so important to get messaging through that's just emotional. It's raw, the actor reasoned, and it just shows the world just how much I and we all believe in this movie and how incredible it's going to be. It's truly going to change the world. Then he continues.
Okay, if you believe that, sure.
Okay, and then he goes on to say how Asian audiences, Shang-Chi will finally give younger Asian audiences something that the actor himself was supposedly devoid of in his childhood: an aspirational Asian hero.
I mean,
the quote being
Jackie Chan Adventures as a kid.
I was about to say, like, you know, we talked about this, or I talked about this a little bit before we started the show today, and you know, I did some research. I checked when was this guy born. So the actor playing Shang-Chi was born April 19th of 1989. So that means, and he then immigrated from China to Ontario here in the States at the age of 5, which means he had, from 1994 to 2010, because he would have been 21 2010, from 1994 to 2010, he had, you know, all that time to watch, you know, Enter the Dragon, Legend of the Drunken Master, Ip Man, all the other ones, like Birth of the Dragon? Right? Like, I'm just trying to remember all the Bruce Lee movies. Like, you have Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, you know, like, and those are just the popular ones. And you got others too. Yeah, here, Tell him 29's got me covered. Bruce Lee, Donnie Yen, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, the Shaw Brothers, and what they aren't aspirational. Like, yeah, you kidding me?
Only now it is inspirational.
Obviously, with the exception of the Enter the Dragon, you know, one of the best movies ever, but The Legend of the Drunken Master is probably one of my favorite kung fu movies, and that was 1994. Like, it's literally when he would have first come to the States. You know, like, that was a Chinese film. There was Jackie Chan at one point on fire, literally. You know, you just get completely blasted, and then kick a lot of ass. It was a really good movie. Way of the Dragon, that was it. Way of the Dragon. Thank you, Tatum 29. Yeah, Fist of Fury is another one.
I would note, realistically speaking, though, one cartoon that I would, with this era of reboots and everything, I would love to see a Jackie Chan Adventures with Jade, who was his niece, I think, something like that. She was the kid that would help him out. I would love to see like a continuation of that with her as an adult doing the same kind of stuff. And the show, the premise of it was that there were these 12 talismans based, I think it was 12, based on the signs of the zodiac, and they would give a person different powers. But then if you had them all combined, they would have like the superpower, similar kind of to like the Infinity Stones from Marvel's Avengers and several other similar kinds of things. The whole show was them trying to find and secure these talismans and make sure the bad guys didn't get them. The bad guys were, of course, trying to, they had nefarious plans where they needed several of them combined to yada yada. But it would be cool to see a continuation of that. And I think that would be a great way to do it. Because again, you could write anything you wanted to in that universe. Because there's no other pre-established stuff, but that would again require you to actually write a story instead of hijacking already existing stories.
Right.
Which, yeah.
American Ninja, American Samurai, Kickboxer, The Quest, Explored Asian. Like, the chat's just naming movies now that have come out, either pretty much anything that came out within the last 50 years. And that's the thing, is even like you have 50 plus years right now, like going on 60 plus years of Asian movies and Asian heroes and icons that this guy could have looked up to when he was a kid. I mean, as we mentioned, Jet Li, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan. I'm blanking on the guy from Ip Man, because Ip Man's a really good kung fu too. But there's all these movies that like I've seen when I was a kid. Where was this guy doing?
You would have had to have heard of all of these, but one or two even, if you were so deprived as a kid of inspirational Asian heroes. They were out there. Where were you?
Yep. And it's not like you. I know some of these movies, like Legend of the Drunken Master, like you weren't able to see it in America in 1995 when it came out, or 1994 when it came out. Sorry, but you were able to see it in 95 or later. Like it took a year or more for some of those films to come to stateside, but eventually they did. They were definitely there before 2000. Especially, if they came out. It was usually around a year or two they would come to the States. And here's the thing is, so Tim29 points out something that I forgot to mention earlier, but yeah, so Shang-Chi is not, like, they're touting Shang-Chi as the first Asian hero, similar to what they did with Black Panther, where it's the first black superhero, and then with Captain Marvel, they had a first female superhero, despite, obviously Blade coming out in the 90s and Steel coming out in the 90s. And before that, you had a movie in, I think, late 80s. And obviously with Captain Marvel, you had Wonder Woman the year before, Elektra in 2005, Catwoman in 2004, Barbed Wire in 1996. So, like, obviously they're wrong, and they're wrong here because it's not the first Asian superhero. Or, like, it's not the first Asian hero, and it's not the first Asian superhero, because, as Tim29 points out, we had Kato from the Green Lantern, and the Green Hornet. Fuck.
What about you? When did, was Iron Fist Asian originally?
No, Iron Fist was white. That was, like, he was
okay.
A white guy in an Asian city.
Okay.
But he teamed up a lot with that's really the only reason why I know of Shang-Chi, is because of some of the Iron Fist issues I have where he teams up with Shang-Chi to stop his evil father, Fu Manchu. Yes, his father's name's Fu Manchu.
Whatever. That's his name.
Yeah. And it's like he's like an evil kung fu master and has his army of kung fu assassins. He wants Shang-Chi to follow in his footsteps. Good guy, so no, he's not going to. Works with a detective to stop him. The interesting story, I mean, Shang-Chi himself, the character of Shang-Chi was created in 1973 in response to Enter the Dragon, which released in the same year. Like, it's Marvel's Bruce Lee. Like, I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's just a Bruce Lee knockoff. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying what it is. It's a it's Marvel's Bruce Lee knockoff, but it's still a good story. It's a good character. I love that the chat's just going on different martial arts and Asian hero movies like Rush Hour, Rumble in the Bronx, Steel. Oh, Steel was no, he was referring to Steel when I said Black Panther earlier.
Yeah, it's like this is not some thing that's never ever happened before or some obscure thing. It's like there's a lot of shit out there.
This is like here over the weekend. The actor appeared to take umbrage with Disney CEO Bob Chapek saying the theatrical only release strategy for Shang-Chi would be an interesting experiment. We talked about this last week when they were regarding all the Disney versus Scarlett Johansson contract stuff regarding the movie not being exclusively to theaters. But he talked about how this is like a first. Like this. He looks forward to when we're celebrating seconds and thirds and fourths of this type of stuff. And I'm just like, dude, where have you been the last half century? Like this, we've had. I mean, kung fu movies is a genre because of all these Asian icons like again Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. Just to name the big three, right?
Yeah. Like,
how many people have played Kato? Like, Bruce Lee played Kato, but like Kato's been the Green Hornet character of Kato has existed since I think 1937. I might be wrong, so I can check. 1936. So this character's been in existence for almost a century. He came out well, but so he's before Shang-Chi and all that, definitely. Like, and I mean, you can call me out if I'm wrong here, but I think it's safe to count the Green Hornet as a superhero.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the entire point was he was taking down villains that regular, the regular police and other law enforcement could not.
Yeah. Now, Victor keeps talking about Snake Eyes. Victor, wasn't Snake Eyes white originally? Are we talking about G.I. Joe Snake Eyes, or is this something different entirely? Tim29 says, martial arts has many different styles, not just from Asia, but from other parts of the world. This is true. You can say Krav Maga, which is Israeli. Something I've learned is a version of martial arts. It is a martial art.
Yeah.
I mean, when people think of martial arts, they usually think of, kung fu and taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, where that's not like martial arts is more than just those three. It's a bunch of Krav Maga. I think the U.S. Army uses some.
So, I want to say the Army teaches more of like it's more of a wrestling kind of thing. So I think it's more on the lines of judo. I want to say. I could be wrong there. I never really got too much high into the hand-to-hand stuff myself, so.
I did wrestling in high school, and there's a lot of like judo moves and some jiu-jitsu as well. I think wrestling is a form of martial
arts. To a degree.
It's a form, not yeah. Definitely not as much as Krav Maga, though. Krav Maga is all about adapting. So it's like, okay, someone's doing this, you use weak points. Victor says, does Kung Fu Panda count? I mean, were any of the voice actor? I mean, I guess. right? I mean, the characters themselves were Asian. Voice actors weren't, but that animated doesn't really matter, right? Sorry, I'm trying to find the freaking quote here. But yeah, I just kind of find it funny because like this is the third time Disney Marvel has tried to do this. Where it's the first when
It's like not even close.
Yeah. Whereas the other ones, it wasn't even close. This one, it's like, what are you smoking?
I mean, I guarantee it's because it shows who their target audience is. I think, in that their target audience are not the comic book readers, the people who have been following this character, who know who this character is. That's not their audience. Their audience is your everyday Joe Schmo who has never heard of this character before. They know nothing about comics in general. Oh, it's the first Asian superhero. I guess we'll have to go watch that. That's literally it. It's that they know that they're incorrect. They don't care about it. It's purely for the publicity of making the claim. They don't care if the claim's wrong. They're still going to make it just so that people see that and they go, oh, okay. They're looking for the people who do not dig any deeper, who are just going to go and dump money on it because, well, they did some decent stuff in the past, and that's it. They are not catering it toward the actual people who followed Marvel Comics and know who the character is or anything like that.
And I think one of the biggest examples of that, I think, is the current version of Spider-Man. Like, my father and I are huge Spider-Man fans, and every time, if you can't tell that I'm a fan just by looking at our logo, then, well, that's not my problem. But it's like we watched the Homecoming, back in theaters in 2017, and when we were asked about it, both of us had the same answer to other people, and that was, if you're a comic book fan, you're gonna hate it. If you're not a comic book fan, you'll enjoy it. And I can understand, like, oh, well, that can speak true for pretty much any comic book film, but there are comic book films that are really good because they adhere close enough to the source material that it's still the character and it's still that world, or a version of that world, like an Elseworlds type story or something, but this was not even, Spider-Boy Jr. But here, like Shang-Chi, like it's not even, his father isn't even Fu Manchu. I think they're doing like the Mandarin or something. His father. I honestly, I haven't even seen any of the trailers.
More of an adoption kind of thing.
I don't know. I haven't been following this movie. Aside from this, I haven't been following the movie at all. Like, this is the first time I'm actually seeing real artwork for it. And I'm assuming that these rings on his forearm are the 10 rings, in the title of the film, and you can see them holding the rings in this cover art. And they look like, you know what they remind me of? In Sonic, when you go get the rings in Sonic that you collect. The giant floating rings that look like you can hold them and wear them around your head. Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, the 10 rings in Marvel Comics are like actual rings, like rings you wear on your fingers. And they are alien power generators that, obviously, they're alien, so for us they look like rings, and they have untold power. The weapons of the Mandarin is Iron Man's biggest villain. Of course, they never had Iron Man fight the Mandarin in the movies, because that would mean they have a American hero fighting a Chinese villain. That wouldn't fly.
That won't sell in China.
That's the thing, is they care more about selling in China than they do in the States nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, the only...
Well, because, if you think about it, it's the same reason why you see in a lot of cases, you see some of this very lopsided representation of certain things and not others, in that if you were to go and write a story where you have either nothing against China or something Chinese is represented in a good way, China's going to go and buy it and open up their market to it. The U.S. market might be like, maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. Is it good, decent quality content? That's really how that's going to play out. versus if you flip that around and you're like, okay, we're going to go and show something that won't reflect positively on China or a Chinese person. It doesn't even necessarily have to say anything about China as a country or anything else, but just something that could theoretically, if you stretch and squint a little bit, could reflect badly on a Chinese person or China in general. The Chinese government might go, hey, no, we're not going to let that be sold here at all in any way, shape, or form. And that completely closes off the market there. Versus if you have something in the US that reflects badly on the US, a lot of people are going to be like, okay, we don't really care. We aren't pretending that the United States is perfect or anything else there. So, okay, sure, you can show the US as, having bad parts or being bad in some ways. What matters is the rest of the content of what you're selling. So they have no problems going in and cutting stuff out for the Chinese market, because if they don't, it closes that entire market off. Whereas in the US, that's not what happens. If it did, they'd probably be like, well, shit, okay, which one's the bigger market? Where do we want to get our money from?
Yeah. That's unfortunate reality of it. That's all about the money. Just trying to keep up with the chat here. Because you guys been on fire. They mentioned Bloodsport.
Let me out.
Like Victor even mentioned Mulan, which is another Disney property, which features an Asian hero.
And they fucked up live action, didn't they?
And they did make a live action. That's right.
Whether
it was good or not,
China didn't like it.
Yeah, but by the way, whether it's good or not, it's irrelevant. It still exists. Steel is a really crappy movie. The one with Shaq.
I got one. Kung Fu Panda.
I watched the first one.
No. What was interesting about Kung Fu Panda was that again, supposedly here, after it was written and released, you had a lot of people in the Chinese film industry going, how the fuck is it that Americans are writing better stories about us than we are?
Because we're not bound by censorship bullshit.
Yeah.
Yet, I was about to say, yeah. At least nowadays. At least then, actually, I should clarify, at least then we weren't. Now it's starting to become a little iffy. Don't worry, Tillam, if you spelt it wrong, don't worry. I'm not the best speller or pronunciator either, so. Tillam29 says, Crying Freeman movie, which starred Mark Dacascos. Freeman's character was Japanese, who became an assassin for a Chinese 101 dragons. The film had martial arts in it, just like the anime and manga. No retreat, no surrender movie where the main character learns from the spirit of Bruce Lee. That actually sounds like a really cool movie. I might better watch. What is that? Crying Freeman? I'm actually going to look it up now just so I don't forget later. Alright, got it. Thank you, Tillam29. But yeah, so I just find it a little stupid where it's like, oh, it has to be first. Why does it have to be first? First off, you're not first. You're long from it.
Right in the poster. Because again, that's literally all that matters. All that matters is the original representation of the message. They don't care if they're wrong. They don't even care if they'll later on have to go and bury in some internet article that, oh yeah, I guess there were some other Asian heroes before that. They don't care. Just the fact that they can put it out there, knowing it's wrong, just so people read it and go, oh yeah, okay. And that'll be what they think.
Yeah, and here's that quote, by the way, where it's like, I'm looking forward to the moment where when we no longer celebrate firsts, which, I mean, let's be honest, we're not celebrating them here, we're pointing out that they're not firsts. Again, how many, when was the first Bruce Lee movie, or when was the first, we've had, again, 60 plus years of Asian heroes. This is not a first, at all. Let me put it this way. In 20 years, what are people going to remember? Bruce Lee's Entered the Dragon? Or Shang-Chi? I'm leaning towards Entered the Dragon. How about you? Yeah, he continues, we're celebrating seconds, he's waiting for that time where we're celebrating seconds, thirds, and fourths. Which, why do we have to be celebrating them at all? It should be... We should, this thing is.
We should be celebrating the stories and not necessarily
Exactly.
individual
It
characters.
shouldn't matter what
in
number
the
it is
story.
or what it is. It should matter how it is and what it's about. That should be the more important aspect of it. Not, what is it? Like, what number is it? Like, how many times have they done this? Is it good? What is it about? We should be celebrating the writing, the characters, not the, like, oh, this is the 5th film, but it stars an Asian hero. When A, it wouldn't be, and B, why does it matter? For all this talk about representation and stuff, you do an awful lot of divisiveness and segregation. It's ridiculous. Like, why does it matter that it's a first? It doesn't matter if it's first. It matters if it's good.
It's all marketing.
Yeah. Oh, obviously. I mean, look.
If your marketing is incorrect or even a blatant lie, as long as it gets that lie out there to enough people who will believe it when they read it and not look further into it, that's what it is.
I mean, look. Let's just search in Google the first Asian hero, not superhero or anything, just first Asian hero, and immediately we're getting Shang-Chi. Here we're just getting a list of Asian superheroes. But then we search.
I would bet too that Marvel went and paid.
Oh, of
Google
course
some
they did. Look.
So,
we're gonna do this right now. First female superhero movie, and we actually get an actual. Okay, we're actually getting an accurate answer for one. That's nice. Are we gonna get an accurate answer if we do this? Well, assuming we don't misspell it. Yeah, okay, interesting. The Meteor Man. Okay, cool. We actually are getting an accurate answer to that. Because last year, because I did this, I think, on stream once. Last year, if I searched first female superhero, I got Captain Marvel. And not Shazam Captain Marvel. Which wouldn't make any sense, but...
Yep.
Just the quote here, you got talking about like how the film's gonna be great, it's gonna be world changing. It feels like they're overselling.
And I will say, from his perspective, maybe it will be.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it this way: it will definitely be world changing for him because it's gonna launch his career.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not wrong.
Maybe
he's gonna be in a Disney Marvel film. That's totally gonna blow up your career now. But in terms of like this marketing thing, it's like it's like even if this was a good movie, they're overselling it, which would, assuming you're not a skeptic like we are, you're gonna have your expectations skyrocket from all this, and then all of a sudden you get a really mediocre product at best. Oh, and in the article, apparently the actor claimed he never saw any aspirational Asian heroes, as well as his claim that Shang-Chi would be the first such character in cinema history. Wow, not even just superhero, cinema history. So we're just blowing history out of the water here in terms of falsifying facts.
History did not exist until I say it existed.
Right. Asian character is particularly odd considering that the works of such Asian films legends as Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Sho Kasugi were wildly popular in the United States by the time the actor was born in 1989. You kidding me? They were popular when they came out. A lot of them were.
Yeah.
Because especially since Enter the Dragon, when that came out, there were already a few Bruce Lee Dragon movies. So this was, from people I know that were alive at the time, this was a anticipated film. Then again, most people I know that were alive at the time are kung fu fans anyway, so maybe that's not the best example, but still really just stupid. Like, as I pointed out before, like he had 21. He was born in 1989. He had 21 years to get to know like all these movies that came out well before he was born. Enter the Dragon was 1973. Jackie Chan's Legend of the Drunken Master was 1994. Hell, Ip Man was 2008. That's even more recent. And also the shit ton of sequels they made for Ip Man. There's like 5 of them, I think. And they're all on Netflix too.
It should be noted that IP Man was made in, well, I don't think it was made in the U.S.
No, I don't think. Neither was Legend of the Drunken Master. That was made in. I think it was made
Yeah,
in
so
China.
is the movie that this guy's going to be in, is it going to be produced here in the U.S.?
You know what? I don't know, but with the power of the internet, we can look it up.
We have the power.
Where? I guess what? Where was Shang-Chi filmed?
Sure, let's go with that. What could
San
possibly go
Francisco.
wrong? Well, there you go.
Up the
I don't know, maybe that's what
in
they're saying.
San Francisco.
Well, I mean, if that was what they were saying, they would just say this is the first Asian hero movie that's filmed in the U.S.
Is that even true though?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
Pretty sure Jackie Chan has some movies made here
He had a shit
by
ton.
American companies.
No, what? I guess you can count the Foreigner. Ever see the Foreigner?
Oh! By the way, it's not a live action movie, but Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, no, that's more Japanese, but still.
Yes, it is, but it is still Asian. But Samurai Jack was, it's animated, but it was a cartoon with an Asian hero. That was what 2000 and God, when the hell was that? I don't remember when that. Watch it all the damn time.
2000 and a long time ago.
Good enough. Like hell, you can go, Wikipedia here, list of all these freaking Asian characters. Most of which all came out before Shang-Chi. It's like... Obviously, the most notable being, I think, at least the most popular being, I think, Kato. Right? From the Green Hornet. Always a long-ass list. That's a good thing. Trying to find Kato right now. That's why I was under the wrong ethnicity. What's that? I don't know. The point is that you have a shit ton of characters that came out before this, and we're just talking about before Shang-Chi even existed, let alone the movie and all that. A lot of these characters have had animated film or TV show adaptations. Some of these characters debuted in a TV show or movie.
Well, if they say it loud enough, all the people who grew up like after those movies came out might not have seen them, so in their minds they don't know anything different than what they're told.
Yeah, that's the thing. He who is the loudest is not always the.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know. Whatever the same. Oh, here, Samurai Jack, Cartoon Network and Toonami. Here's I have the Kato tab open, but you have. Again, you had the movies, and here portrayed by Raymond Hayashi. You had Luke, Bruce Lee, and Jay Cho was the more recent one. Hell, even that 2011 movie wasn't bad. It wasn't particularly great, but I liked Kato in that. Just a load of bullshit. What all of this is. Not all of this, but what Disney and Marvel is spouting. And their actors. But seriously, like, kids growing up today won't have what I didn't, an aspirational Asian hero. I mean, you had them and just didn't watch them. Like, they existed, right. You just didn't watch them. Like, kids still have them. They're just...
No. Rerunning history. No.
Hey. Home 29 says Crying Freeman is separate from the movie. No Retreat, No Surrender. Oh, that's the name of the movie? Okay, so... Write that down now. Film 29 says their first is are terrible frauds. And they're not even the first terrible frauds either.
This isn't their first time trying to be frauds either.
Right. I mean, was it last week we were talking about, was it last week? We were talking about last week we were talking about the Home Alone remake that they're doing, Reboot.
Yep.
Like, didn't they make already one, or am I just forgetting something? They made a fourth one.
They're working on it.
But they're working on rebooting that. I mean, like, we've had reboots and stuff that are just awful versions of the original. In some cases, we've had reboots that are better than the original, like The Italian Job and Ocean's 11. That's really it.
They're gonna have to do a damn good job to make Home Alone better than the original.
What, Ocean's 11?
No, the Home Alone remake. They're gonna have to do a damn good job.
Oh, they're totally not. They're totally not going to, though. Yeah, that's right. So you weren't here when we were talking about it. It's pretty much what was it? It was originally announced in August of 2019 that they were going to reboot Home Alone, Cheaper by the Dozen, Die Hard, and Night at the Living Museum.
Oh boy.
And obviously now we finally got confirmation on the Home Alone remake, and we got details of it, actors and all that. It's called Home Sweet Home Alone, and it's going to be absolute mess.
That sounds like a stupid title.
Yeah, sounds like a parody title. Especially when, think about it. Look, when I first heard about the Home Alone reboot in 2019, my first thought was, the kid's going to have a smartphone. Just instantly call up the family. Hey, I'm still, like, where are you guys? I'm still home. Like, shit, you're still home? Like, it's
well, I mean, it's like, let's say it's like they somehow forget the kid. They have a whole bunch of kids. They forget one of them. Kid wakes up. It's like Saturday, so he wakes up at like 11. Parents are even, let's say they're even on the plane. As soon as they land, so it's like, okay, while they're on the plane, they don't have cell service, even though most planes offer like a Wi-Fi service. Sometimes you got to pay for it. Sometimes you don't. They land.
Also depends on the flight and depends on where you're going.
5 missed calls. Hey, mom, dad, it's me, your kid. You left me here. Let me know when you get this message. Like, come on.
I'm trying to find that article. But yeah, it's like the kid can leave a message, and then the parents are still going to get that message when they arrive wherever they're going. Not to mention the fact that, okay, so the kid's there, just get a flight back, and not like the original worked. This doesn't. This new one's not going to.
I mean, we don't. To be fair, we don't know what this one's going to be, but it's likelihood of it being as good as the original, from my perspective, is not good.
Well, the best part about it was the director, Chris Columbus, the director of the original Home Alone and Home Alone 2, was like, "Why are you making this? It's needless." And it's not like, and he's not coming from like oh, I did this, don't remake my film type of thing. He's like, why are you redoing, like, do something new, don't just do what I did. And what's great is how, like, he even mentions, like, I know, I'm on the talk, I redid what I did with Home Alone 2. Like, he even says, I even accused myself of it, I did with Home Alone 2, I just redid the same thing. They're basically a remake of Home Alone 2, he just calls himself out. It doesn't need to exist, it doesn't. Like, and that's what I love about it. It's like, yeah, you don't need to remake stuff. Your remakes are shit. I named 2 good ones, but let's face it, they were they were very different from the originals. And also, how long was the first Italian Job was 1963, I think? And the remake was 2003? I don't remember when the original Ocean's 11 was, but both of them ended very, I'm not going to say badly, because they were still good movies. It just, they ended negatively. Whereas at the end of the original Italian Job, first off, it was a like mostly British European movie. Like Michael Caine was Charlie in that film, the main guy, and it was British cast and all that. And the end of the film, they have all the gold. They're on a bus with the gold, and then the bus is like, there's an accident, and the bus is kind of half off of a cliff. The gold off the cliff edge. Everyone else on the edge of the cliff, it's still in the bus, and they're trying to figure out how they can move the gold to the other end, and it just ends there. It's like on a literal cliffhanger. It ends on a literal cliffhanger, and it's not exactly the best ending. Like, oh crap! So all that was for nothing because you guys might fall to your deaths just trying to move that gold. And Ocean's 11, the original, ended with one of the characters from the heist dies, and they hide the body in his coffin, but they hide the money, with his body in the coffin. But the body gets cremated, along with all the money.
Whoops.
Exactly, so it's like, oh, crap. And obviously, the remakes obviously ended a little bit better, the remake of the 2003 Italian Job with Mark Wahlberg as Charlie, and I think it was Charlize Theron as the chick who was in the original was literally just like a babe. Like she had no part in the film. She was a side character. Whereas in the remake, she was an actual character, literally essential to the plot. And
I remember watching the movie for the first
time. The remake, the 2003 one's actually really good.
Yeah.
And I love the Mini Coupe scene. But it ended happy, they got the gold, they beat the bad guy, and it's all good. Ocean's 11, same thing, gets his wife back, they get the money. So but the thing is, there was how many, it was, again, 1960s to early 2000s. There was a long time, and again, pretty much completely different movies. And the originals weren't that great. They had memorable moments, but they weren't that great. The remakes were. Whereas here, you're remaking good movies that actually have lasting value. Like, how many people still watch Home Alone today? Like, it's still a relevant film.
Mm.
Die Hard, still a relevant film. So, that's just me. I don't like the idea of remakes. Again, those two, I believe, are the exception to the rule. But that doesn't mean that everyone should be remaking things all the damn fucking. And also, you mentioned earlier, Cam, about comic books. They're not gonna adhere to the comic book stuff because, and it's funny because Jim Steranko, who does brilliant cover art, as you can see on the screen, colorful, really, really well done. I love the shading. And he refuses to watch some of the MCU because what was the quote? Pretty much, this guy created the character of Countessa Valentina Allegra de La Fontaine. Mouthful. Essentially, the Countess Val, the character of Nick Fury's love interest from the 90s. And the character is now portrayed by Elaine from Seinfeld, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. This is her in, I guess, the Winter Soldier show? I haven't watched either the Winter Soldier show or really anything Marvel that's come out in the last few years. So I didn't know about this till reading the article, but apparently she's playing this character who looks like this in the comics. A complete knockout. Almost what's the Frankenstein monster? The Bride of Frankenstein, right? Type hair. She's in the comics. She's a medic, and she's essentially a kick-ass SHIELD agent, partner to Nick Fury and all that. And Jim Steranko was asked about it, and he goes, "Would you be surprised if I confessed that I miss a fair share of Marvel TV series and films because some and many have taken liberties in the transition of characters just don't quite seem to work. Or maybe I'm not the masochist some would like me to be, implying that he doesn't want to, torture himself in watching these movies because, yeah, I mean, this is not the same character as this. Hell, even the comics nowadays, it's not the same character. But then again, that's true for almost everyone now.
Well, I mean, it's like, as with any story, especially when you're retelling it, we're not going to be retelling the same story over and over. I mean, even back when your storytellers were people who had memorized the story and travel from place to place, verbally telling the story, even then they would memorize the major points of it and then just kind of fill in the gaps with whatever they felt like was appropriate or worked for when they were telling it. But even still, there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. And I don't know, but it seems like a lot of the ways they're retelling stories now are pretty bad ways, but the only reason they keep getting published is because they've got a ton of fucking money behind them, even though no one wants to hear what they're saying.
So we missed a bunch of chats. Tillin29 says, just look at where Bruce Lee is credited. Yeah, we can just literally look at his IMDb page and see where, what he's been credited to. And you can see all the stuff that he's been in. I probably should have done that earlier. But he also says, what, did the actor playing Shang-Chi, did the actor grow up in a closet or a communist prison? No, I mean, again,
maybe.
he according to the bio I read, he was in the States by 1994.
Yeah,
he was in Ontario. So he should have had access to all the same kung fu movies I had. Victor Wolfgang says, and The Thing. Okay, so he's talking about oh, that's right, The Thing. There was actually the remake of The Thing. Victor Wolfgang says, I heard something about another He-Man reboot. How many He-Man reboots are they going to do?
How are they going to make that work in our day and age?
Oh yeah, because big masculine man.
Remember too that they're going to do it the same way they're doing the Superman remakes, but also if you remember, guys are never over sexualized at all. That only happens with women, right?
I mean, wasn't He-Man like traditionally a massive womanizer?
Yeah, believe so.
I have no idea. I was not a huge He-Man guy.
It's been a while since it's out, but I think he might not have been necessarily a womanizer, but he was definitely in at least what would be today very inappropriate.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that it's a big masculine shirtless dude. Like they would either have to like kill him or make him very emasculine in order to do it today. To appease
or, make him gay.
Whatever. Or make him gay. Because that's the answer to everything now. Victor Wolfgang says, it should be a horror film from the criminal's point of view. Here's an idea. You have a horror movie about the mafia family trying to survive and escape the wrath of the Punisher. Oh, that sounds like a really fun little, just... no, I mean, I think, Batman Gotham Knight. There's an anime, it's like an anthology series, similar to Halo Legends, where it's one of the shorts is exactly that. Like, you're seeing Batman from the perspective of, punk kids and, at one point, a criminal, like a guy with a gun, about to kill a cop, and Batman's just there standing in the fire, like, I'll kill her! It's like, no, won't. He just gets his ass handed to him. Victor Wolfgang says, Die Hard is an adaptation of a book, and the original actor for John is old enough to... They're playing a more book-like version. Original actor for John, not Bruce Willis? Well, my roommate was once watching a documentary on the original Die Hard, and every now and then when I was walking to the room, I heard bits and pieces. I don't know much about the making of the film itself is amazing. Yeah, here you have a bunch of Bruce Lee movies all the way from he's an infant in Golden Gate Girl, but going from 50s, 60s, 70s. Not like you have no Asian heroes to choose from, guy. It's like, on. Yeah, and that's not against like Jackie Chan still doing stuff.
Is he? I haven't seen anything from him for a while.
This year he was in a movie called All You Need Is Love. Last year he was in a movie called Vanguard.
Huh.
In 2019 he was in 3 different films: The Night of Shadows, Between Yin and Yang, Iron Mask, and The Climbers. I don't know what any of these films are. I'm literally just reading off this list here. But, I mean, he's been busy. The last thing I saw him in was The Foreigner,
Yeah.
where he plays the Chinaman. Because it's based on a book called The Chinaman, which is a really good story. Guy, a U.S. Vietnam vet who's now living in Britain, and his daughter dies in a IRA bombing, and pretty much goes on this entire adventure of revenge on the people that killed his daughter. So like his last, like he had 3 daughters originally. 2 of them didn't make the journey from China to the United States when they were young, and he was young. Like, it's a sad story, but it's also a really good movie. Victor Wolfgang says, "Wait, who plays the main character of Die Hard? Because he's old enough to play a book-like version." Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis is the guy that plays John McClane. Oh, look, and Jackie Chan's working on a new film he's in a new film called Snafu. And 2 others, 5 Against a Bullet and Once Upon a Zodiac. So the dude's still doing shit. Like, this is...
Yeah.
And like, you look at his history, like he's at least in 3 films a year. A little insane. Like, here you got Legend, my personal favorite, Legend of the Drunken Master, of Jackie Chan stuff. I mean, seriously, Jackie Chan doing kung fu on fire. What's not to love? Also, I don't know if at least I never heard of a dubbed version of that film existing. Then again, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, he was even in Enter the Dragon as a thug in prison. Forgot about that. But, like, you have so much history of Asian heroes, of kung fu movies, of just movies that star Asian actors, and that all that shit that you're complaining about doesn't exist, but it does exist. It has existed.
He was in Shanghai Nights and Rush Hour. Was it Rush Hour?
Rush Hour, yeah, Rush Hour with I want to say not Chris Rock, but the other guy. They have like very similar. They have very similar skits, so like very similar comedy skits style. So I always confuse them because of their style of comedy. It was the same guy that was in The Fifth Element, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got all this. He's even in that like really crappy movie with the guy from Wedding Crashers, Shanghai Noon. It's like, obviously that was like a co-star role, but still it exists. Where's that movie? Who Am I? That was horrible. That was like his first. I think it was his first English role. Yeah, Who Am I? And here you got Rush Hour, Rush Hour 2, Rush Hour 3. And the Karate Kid remake, which wasn't good at all. I was unfortunately subjected to that film. But yeah, that's so. Apparently, Shang-Chi is going to be the first of nothing. Moving on, though, we got our next topic, which it's nothing new, and that's the unfortunate side of things. We've talked about it before. It's the story of comic book creators getting screwed over. Apparently, the Guardian article is not going to let me read it, so I'm just sounding the. Essentially, comic book creators are getting screwed over by mostly DC and Marvel. Specifically, Ed Brubaker, who co-created the character of the Winter Soldier, who's come out before many times to speak out against Marvel's royalty system, because essentially Marvel and DC don't pay. Essentially, if you create a character for Marvel or DC, you'll get like a $5,000 check and a thank you note, and then that's it. Despite the movie of said character you created making billions of dollars, you're not getting any royalties from that.
Well, that sounds terrible, but I have to wonder whether they signed a contract, because if they did, that's kind of their fault.
So your Marvel and DC's contractual and copyright clashes with creators they did dirty are far from a thing of the past. Hell, even Stan Lee was even screwed over by Marvel back in 2002 with the original Spider-Man movie. They didn't pay him. And he took him to court for it. Eventually he got paid for that, but it's like, it's not new, and the Marvel especially has been doing it to every creator, including Stan Lee himself. Stan the man. So we got Ed Brubaker here talking about. Oh no, so anonymous Marvel creator said to The Guardian that I've been offered a special character contract that was really, really terrible, and it was that or nothing. You talk about how it allows for a select few creators to claim remuneration when their characters and stories are used. Yeah, and then thank you. And then instead of honoring it, they send you a thank you note and are like, "Here's some money we don't owe you," and it's $5,000. And you're like, the movie made $1 billion.
Yeah.
So here they're not abiding by their contract, according to this, or at least this guy's specific contract. They weren't abiding to. They just gave.
Well, I mean, and like you said, we've seen this before.
Yeah, it's nothing. Again, like we've seen this. Even Stan Lee had to deal with this. Like that shouldn't be happening.
What I don't get too is it's like I can understand, especially if you were a small business or even like growing into a going from a small business to a medium business, because at that point you have to penny pinch. But it's like for Disney, paying out what they owe in all these contracts would be a dip in the fucking bucket. It's not going to hurt.
Let me put it this way: in terms of money, let me put it this way: the only reason Marvel Comics is still afloat at all, like Marvel Comics, the company and the comic books themselves are afloat, is because they have Disney backing them.
Yeah. And it's like it would cost them less than 1% to go and honor these contracts, and yet they're screwing people over left and right, getting the lawsuits left and right once they piss off enough people, and they all are like, "Hey, we're doing a class action lawsuit against you." And it's like, and for what? What are you even gaining on it? You're screwing a 10,000 here, or 100,000 there. That's nothing. You're how much revenue does Disney make a year? We're probably talking billions,
multi-billions.
It's like we're talking
Once again, though,
less than 1% of a percent even. Why? To me, it makes, and again, maybe it's just because I'm not like super rich. Maybe it's just something when you're hiring in your financial managers for really big companies. Maybe
they
it's
made
finance school.
$65.39 billion US in 2020 fiscal year.
Yeah, and that's billion with a B. So it's like, I mean, even
Multi-billion
if we're
dollars.
talking a few million, that's still less than a single percent of their, and that's just revenue. Or is that revenue, or is that
Generated revenue. Yeah, that is just revenue.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It would cost them nothing, pretty much, to go and just honor these contracts as they rep them, and it would build up a lot of goodwill. Which I get nowadays, especially, you have a lot of companies don't care about goodwill anymore, especially when you have, the government giving you money or other stuff. You're like, we're too big to fail. Haha, we don't care if you like us or not. You're stuck with us. But even still, I don't get it. Maybe it's just because maybe I just don't want to be an asshole, even if I had the power to be an asshole or anyone I wanted to. Like, it's just why. What gain is there really of hurting? And it's like, when you're hurting these people too, it's like, for you, it's nothing. For them, that could be their everything. They could be counting on that to be paying off bills, or helping out their parents or their friend or anything else here. For you, it's nothing. For them, it could be the difference between huge changes in their life, all because you don't want to honor what you already promised them. I don't get it, but.
And yeah, nothing. If you remember, a few months ago, we were covering an article where Ed Brubaker, the creator of Thanos, like from the Hollywood Reporter, they were talking about all these different character, the creators of all these characters, including Seth MacFarlane, Todd McFarlane, who created Spawn, and he didn't get any. Like, he was completely unattached from the movie that they made, and that's why he's working on the movie himself, like fully trying to fund it and everything, because he wants full control of it. Because like all these people get screwed over whenever they make a movie or a TV show. And they're not even credited. It's not like, whenever you watch a Batman cartoon, in the opening credits, you'll always have character created by Bob Kane. Superman doesn't even get that with, what's-his-face? Why am I blanking on the freaking, creators of Superman? But, like, like, even that, they don't even get that. Like, Bob Kane gets it, but that's great. But, today, first off, Bob Kane's not with us anymore. Second, like, okay, so you put their name there, but are they getting paid, or is it just,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if I go and steal,
you gotta do both. It's not one or the other.
And I go and throw it, it's by this person. It's like, if I'm making money off of that, that's still stealing from them.
Yeah, but it depends on what kind of licensing arrangements you have. We don't really know that information.
I'm just gonna say though, legal shenanigans do not equate to moral, just morality.
And we've seen where companies, especially as big as Disney or other equivalents, will go and they'll specifically bog down the legal process or draw it out, specifically just so it's like they know they're in the wrong. Legally, they are in the wrong, but if they can go and draw it out and make the person waste resources to the point where, hey, financially, I, the little person, cannot sustain my lawsuit because you've dragged it out for so long. I can't keep spending money on that, whereas for them, they have infinite money, essentially, to drag it out. I have to drop it, even though, justice has not been served. They have still broken the law, but because they can drag it out for as long as they can, they win. And that's still not right. It might be legal, but it's not morally or ethically right.
I mean, here, normally Marvel and DC assemble a laundry list of names for a thank you section toward the end of the credits. Captain America writer and Winter Soldier co-creator Ed Brubaker knows this kerfuffle of an imbroglio all too well and sounded off the scandal in a statement which was this year. Because this dude, like, he's used his popularity of, okay, I created the Winter Soldier, wrote the Winter Soldier story in comics and all that, to, essentially advertise for his other work. But that's the only way he's really making money right now. Is from his other work. It's not, like, the stuff he's doing now, not the stuff that he's done. And was it like in the Hollywood Reporter article we read last time we covered the story, he was only getting he's only getting royalties from the cameo scene he did in the Winter Soldier movie, not the fact that he created the character and that they adapted the storyline.
Mm-hmm. And like I said,
so if he wasn't in the film at all, he wouldn't be getting paid.
Well, and Disney will do stuff like that, knowing it is not legal, but also knowing that, well, hey, how long can you drag a lawsuit out? We can go on forever.
Yeah. And the article here says, Brubaker is personally secure from a financial standpoint, and career-wise, but it doesn't change the situation. I actually agree with that. Again, just because he's successful doesn't necessarily mean that what's going on is right.
Well,
I mean, he says here, for the most part.
And I was just going to say, like what we saw with, what's her name? The actress who played Black Widow.
Oh, Scarlett Johansson. She's suing Disney for breaking their contract.
With that, it's like, it doesn't matter that, okay, yeah, she's rich. That still doesn't mean that one.
It's all over money. The entire lawsuit is about money.
And screw people out of their contracts. But also, too, my point was just, if that's how they're treating their A-liners who are very much in the spotlight representing the company in their films, if that's how they treat their A-liners, how are they treating everyone else? And we're very clearly seeing that.
Yeah.
They're treating everyone like shit.
According to Brubaker here in this quote, he talked about how him and Steve Epting, the guy who co-created Winter Soldier with him, all they've gotten for their creating the Winter Soldier is a storyline. For the storyline is thanks here and there, and over the years that's come harder and harder to live with. They're not even getting paid.
Yeah, I mean,
that's all he said in the previous report from the Hollywood Reporter. It was all he was getting was kickbacks from his cameo, not from actually creating the story that they used.
Yeah.
And then he continues saying, I have a great life as a writer, and much of it is because of Cap and the Winter Soldier, bringing so many readers to my other work. But I also can't deny feeling a bit sick to my stomach sometimes when my inbox fills up with people wanting comments on the show. Probably because every time he sees the show, it's like he's not attached to the show aside from it's his characters, but that's it. It's just his characters. He's not getting paid. He's not getting any royalties.
I mean, and
so
I do
understand
of course, it depends on how who owns the licensing rights and that kind of stuff too. But we're consistently seeing actual writers and content creators getting screwed out of this stuff by these larger companies because they can. Who's going to stop them? And they get away with it.
And an interesting
honestly,
twist
I think it's beyond time too for Disney and a few other large companies to be hit with antitrust laws.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and that's the funny thing is
the government to actually go, hey, it's time to go and kick this shit in the gear because they're the ones who have to do that.
In a perfect world, you'd have the government keeping the corpse in check and the corpse keeping the government in check because everything in moderation, right? It has to be a balance.
Them in check. But
and obviously the people keeping everyone else in check and all of that. There should be an ecosystem of balance in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world. But we have to, we should at least do everything in our power to make it so.
Yes.
And in an interesting twist here, Black Panther and Captain America, as well as now J.J. Abrams' Superman writer Ta-Nehisi Coates, is also agreeing with Brubaker and Epting about this. The guy that's super woke and talking about how the systemic racism in America and how the people that were trying to rescue 9/11 victims were evil or something. Like this
Who
this
knows
crazy
what
guy.
he's talking about.
It's some really messed up quotes from this guy. This guy's wacko, but he's backing Brubaker and Epting about this because he has written Captain America and Black Panther comics for the last few years, and he says, long before I was writing Captain America, I read Brubaker and Epting's Death of Captain America storyline, which I'm sure he loved because they killed off Captain America, and Return of the Winter Soldier, and it was something the most thrilling storytelling I've ever read. I'd rather read it than watch the movies. I love the movies too, but it doesn't seem just for them to extract what Steve and Ed put into this and create a multi-billion-dollar franchise. He added, just because it's in a contract doesn't make it right. If I have some kind of leverage over you, I can get you to sign a contract to fuck you over. It's just legalist. And
Yeah.
it's kind of surprising coming from the guy that, again, was saying that, like, the first responders at 9/11 were problematic. But it's interesting, like, yeah, he's actually saying the right things here, despite him going completely wacko in the past. And will most likely go wacko again with the Superman thing, because they're writing the black...
point out that it's in the contract, so legally, the guy doesn't have anything. He can't do anything about it, probably.
If they did manage to, but that contract could be looked at and seen, okay, was this a legal contract and how it was written? Because for example, the end user licensing agreements that everyone sees when you install a program and you scroll down to the bottom and you just hit accept. Those are not all
Activision
binding.
Blizzard.
Even though you click, I agree, just because you have clicked that does not make it legally binding.
Also, the fact that take Activision Blizzard, they had contracts for their employees that were not legal, and is part of the reason why they're being sued by the Department of Fair Employment and Housing.
Yep.
So, it's true. These contracts don't necessarily need to be legal. It's just, it's essentially like you can have a lawyer write up a contract that literally has something that says you can be fucked by your employer every day. It's not illegal. It's not legal, but.
Yeah, but
it says in your contract that you should do this, so...
And it's like, that's nice, however, it's still not legal.
I mean,
and just because you've signed a contract, that does not mean you can flout other laws.
And Jonah Hex and Painkiller, Jane writer Jimmy Palmiotti offered his advice too, saying, lawyer up, always, with comic book companies' contracts. They are not in the business of feeding you the math. He added, creators can access lost earnings once a year through an audit that's extremely rare for them to use as a loophole. I can count on one hand the number of creators who've actually audited a major comics company.
Also, too, because how much legal red tape and shit are you going to have to go through that you have to financially support as a independent writer going up against this company who, again, has essentially infinite money?
Yeah, it's an uphill fight, no matter how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the uphill fights, though, are the ones that are worth fighting.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That comic industry's work-for-hire arrangement means that... So the comic book industry does these work-for-hire arrangements where it's essentially their legal loophole for not having to pay you. And the arrangement means that, at a minimum, the big publishers owe creators little more than a fee and royalties, which they don't even pay half the time, or more than half the time. They keep people on with the incentive of a steady gig and share in profits, which is paying off for a lot of writers and artists with the popularity of the MCU and DCU. That hasn't always been the case, as Marvel's relationship with Jack Kirby deteriorated under Jim Shooter, and DC kept Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, those are the Superman creators, out of the equation for years when it came to profiting from their big creation, Superman. In more recent memory, DC phased out paying Jerry Ordway for Power Girl due to the similarity to Supergirl, given that Power Girl is an alternate version of Supergirl, but I think he came first. Anyway, it's a confusing thing, but yeah, they're pretty much alternate versions of the same character. But due to similarity to Supergirl, that can't be helped but given her origin, and enacted their prerogative to print Watchmen sequels without the consent of Alan Moore or Dave Gibbons. This is ironic behavior when the Kirby situation inspired them to pioneer the kind of special character contracts dissected by The Guardian starting in the 1980s. And the Watchmen situation only happened after editor Paul Levitz left in 2009. Under his tenure with Janet Kahn, a great deal of fairness was introduced into their treatment of creators. So, in a legacy Levitz is proud of, despite the obsolescence of practice today. Like,
Yeah, no, it's definitely problematic.
and Levitz actually says, you want to create a situation where you never get the old Russian joke where they prevent to pay us and we pretend to work. You want people to win when the companies win. I'm proud of the fact that we've improved the quality of how we treated creative people. Fast forward, and this is from back then. Fast forward 30 years in DC as well as Marvel's suzerainty under corporate ownership, because they're both owned. DC's owned by Warner Brothers and AT&T. Marvel's owned by Disney. Raises new questions and concerns about how contracts with creatives should be negotiated. As The Guardian reports, now deciding what share of the success their comic creators deserve is a matter of complex wrangling between Marvel and DC, which want to maintain good relations with their talent and the vast bureaucracies above them. They add their sources suggest that at Marvel, who subtracted its own legal fees from a protracted negotiation over royalty payments, it is harder to get paid, although the piece notes both companies count on artists and writers preferring not to spend time chasing them for royalties. In other words, don't ask us for money for the thing that you created. Yeah, like I still like honestly, like Jack Kirby left, had a really bad relationship with Marvel after like the early days. Honestly, which is when he went off to create the Fourth World, which Darkseid and the New Gods and all that. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were the creators of Superman, and DC tried to just forget they existed for years. Imagine you create Superman, the superhero, and you don't see anything from it for decades.
I believe it.
That's the problem, though. And hell, like this one, like Jerry Ordway, whether you agree with some of the stuff he's been saying and all the bullshit or not, he created Power Girl, and he's not getting paid because she's similar to Supergirl, and the way DC works, according to EVS, Ethan Van Sciver, who created several DC characters and did the Flash Rebirth story back in the 2000s. He said he created the character of one of the current Green Lanterns, I think. Jessica something, I think. And he doesn't get paid for it because the character was originally called something else, which that something else was the same name of another character. So he doesn't see anything because they say they share the same name. And it's kind of like the same shit here with Jerry Ordway. He's not getting paid because Power Girl and Supergirl are very similar. It's like, but they're different characters. Like, they were created by different people. It's not, especially more so the case with EVS. Like, he created completely. It shared the same name as this other character, but I think Gauntlet, I think was the name. But it's a completely different character other than the name. It's a completely new thing. Whereas Power Girl, you can make the argument like, yeah, it's kind of like a copy. But one's the copy of another. You can make the argument of which. But here was completely different. The point is, their similarities are, because those characters are similar, they're not getting paid for the character they created. Essentially, just a complete. It's not even a loophole. It's not even like a technicality. It's just
well, again,
bullshit.
Who's going to hold me to it?
And that's the thing is, there's so much red tape involved in getting an audit and just getting them to. And look, they even say like they prefer not to be chased for royalties, like, which means that if you do chase them for royalties, it probably takes a shit ton of time and effort.
Yep. Anywho, anything else on this topic, or?
No, I think that's it for
circles.
this topic, at least. But we do have other topics. I think two more.
Lies?
One is, let's do the good one first, and that being,
There's a good one.
yeah, pretty much. It's really simple. It's Who Framed Roger Rabbit is now coming to Blu-ray in 4K Ultra HD. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, cool, fun movie. Now you can watch it on Blu-ray. 4K, all that. Victor Wolfong says, wait, does that mean that the guy who made the first character gets paid more? What do you mean? Who made the first character?
Meaning he's saying so their claim was that the character was already made, therefore it's the same character, therefore we are going to pay
I have no
you.
idea. Maybe. Or maybe they're
Probably
just...
not.
Probably
not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, again, it could be, but I have no idea. I just know that the character that made this... The person that made the other character is not getting paid at all. Last topic is... Cam, you mentioned the trans stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
So... There's apparently a problem going on. So this is the harm that all this political correctness and diversity representation can cause. I'm not saying it will, because it's not 100%, but it's part, like, a lot of this is because of what's going on in the media today and how escapism is no longer escapism, but instead preaching to you about gender equality, that as though there is no gender equality and all that, and like the wage gaps and this, that, and how we have to retroactively make characters gay, all this stuff.
Mm.
They use it as, in this specific case, it's being theorized that to use as advertising for big pharma, because big pharma, think of it, if someone were to be transitioning, right, to become trans, whatever, what's involved in there? You got you have to, there's whatever it's
you
called.
have to take some drugs, and if I remember,
I'm blanking on the name of the therapy.
You have to
gender affirming therapy.
Hormone therapy.
Yeah,
but that's also something that you don't just stop.
You literally become a lifelong customer. So they love this.
Yeah.
And like some of the drugs are used are the more well-known one is Lupron, which is it's developed to lower testosterone levels in men with prostate cancer. That was the original purpose of it, which effectively chemically castrates them, like a chemical sterilant. But now it's used as a puberty blocker in the booming business of transitioning children. So the story here is...
Also, too, it's like with kids... I'm talking like prepubescent kids here.
We're talking under 18, easily.
Yeah, but it's like with a lot of kids, and I'm talking prepubescent kids. They barely even know what they want to eat that day, let alone what gender they want to be. I mean, to them, there's no real comprehension of what it is. That this is a life-changing decision.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you do this stuff, there's no going back. There's no reverse.
Yeah,
and you can make the argument, you can have surgery.
You can try, but if you do,
you'll never go fully back. Even like you can make the argument, you can have surgery that undoes it. Yeah, except it's not undoing it. It's just doing more to bring you back to a state that you were in, or similar state that you were in. But you're never going back. You're just doing more to resemble that the past, essentially. But the article here, from New York Post, gender ideology is a boon to big pharma and threat to parental rights, because essentially trying to supersede parents. Essentially kids don't need parent approval. It's a really messed up thing here, but
yeah, the idea that the child can make up their own mind at like 5 years old that they want to change.
I think the targeted age here is like 13 oldest, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like I said, at 13, it's like you really don't have, you are beginning to have some idea of what the wider world is, but even still, there is a reason why at 13, even at 15, even at 16, that in our modern society, you are not allowed to enter into binding contracts. You are not allowed to go and make too many life-changing decisions. You can't go and take many medical procedures. You can't go and join the military. You can't do a lot of shit because you're not young enough. And as science has already proven, the brain does not really stop developing, meaning you don't really start growing up until about the age of 20 to 24. Until then, you are not, mentally speaking, you are not an adult until that has happened.
And some people, like all of us, are not mentally adults
and
ever.
it depends, person to person, but it's like, this is why it's like, hey, we aren't going to go and let you join the military at age 15. We aren't going to go and let you make legally binding contracts, but at 13, we're going to go and let you do a life-changing medical decision when you don't even understand. And I would say most people, not all, there's definitely some mature and smarter and world-wise young teenagers, but I would argue that most young teenagers and prepubescent kids do not really have a full comprehensive idea of what this will entail, and that, hey, it might seem like this cool thing when you're 12, but when you're 30 and living like this,
Yeah.
it could completely fuck your life.
And there's also a lot of side effects that aren't talked about. There are side effects to this, mental side effects as well as physical side effects.
I mean, depression. There's I don't even know offhand what the suicide rates are, but I know they're pretty fucking big for those who do go through with it. So it's because people go, hey, I really didn't want to do this, as now that I've had years to look back on it, but well, too late now. Now, that being said, if I would say it should be something that once you're getting closer to like 16, 17, and if you start the paperwork process, let's say at like 13, it's like, okay, you've had years to think about this. As you're maturing, you're still supporting this decision. Sure, okay, at that point, but when you're just 10, 11, 12, 13, again, 13 being the oldest, like...
So, the article, first off, Victor Wolfong says, as a 16-year-old, I completely agree, we are stupid.
And I will say, that's not to say adults can't be stupid. We're all just fucking pretending to be as mature as we can.
Oh, that's what I tried to make a snide comment about before. How you said like, oh, you don't really become an adult mentally until you're 24, and it's like, yeah, and some of us, like the three of us here, are never going to become mentally adults.
I mean, honestly,
hasn't happened yet.
For anyone
not going to happen.
This, I'm 30. I feel old. I'm not that old yet, but I feel old. Honestly, you're faking it until you make it. Being an adult, it's not like at 18 a switch suddenly flips and you're like, I'm this mature, responsible person.
That being said, traumatic experiences can change lives altogether. Not everyone has the same upbringing, but
even
yeah.
then, it's like, I mean, even joining the military, for me, it's like, once you get out of military training, you're this elite soldier and all this stuff. It's like, if you join the military, you're going to be a lazy
but
person.
Everyone I know that's joined the military.
If you were an asshole before you joined, you're still probably going to be an asshole afterwards. That being said, you might learn to control those aspects of yourself a little bit better, or at least have the mental discipline to be able to counteract those inherent tendencies that you as an individual have. But that doesn't change your very self-identity and who you are as a person. You're still going to be the same person that you were before as after.
Cam, you say, like, you're going to be this elite, personality. Like, no, you're just going to be this moron. I'm not, okay, maybe not moron, but you're just like...
You've seen, like, all these comics, it's like, here's...
They're grizzled and experienced and, like, grown up.
They're just perfect soldier upholding all that is good and nothing...
Meanwhile, everyone I know that's been in the military is like, no, we're just the same as you, but we've been in the military. we're just buffoons.
We're the same as you, just we've been trained to use high explosives. Woohoo!
And I mean, to be fair, I've been trained in using high explosives too, and I wasn't in the military, or at least not in the American military. So, yeah. What's this? Use Semtex. So here, so parents across the nation are facing a new threat to their children: the transgender industrial complex. For different but sometimes overlapping reasons, the medical establishment, Big Pharma, the cultural industry, and government agencies are leading to our kids on the road toward transitioning, whether parents like it or not. For the private economy actors especially, the spread of gender ideology is a big boon to their bottom line. Hence why we hate it in Escapism, because, again, a lot of this stuff, we talk about why this is bad from, like, an adult's perspective, but from a kid's perspective, this is essentially, they're making all this, like, why they change characters, this, and all the political correctness and stuff. I mean, tinfoil hat time, but it's essentially to indoctrinate children to think that way.
Yeah, I would agree to a point. Because, I mean, look at Disney. How many pies does Disney have their fingers in?
Not to mention the fact that Disney themselves is notoriously, like, and I don't mean this on, like, notoriously, like, evil, like, they're notoriously, like, they're a kids thing. Like, they're a kids animation and stuff like that. That's how they started out.
Disney World, Disneyland, every kid wants to go there. I went there as a kid a couple of times. I mean...
I've never went, but I did always want to go. Now I don't want to go.
Mean, how many animation studios does Disney own? How many cartoons? How many movies? How many comic books? All of this stuff that they're all controlling. And if they're going, hey, we'll earn money this way, or hey, our buddies over here spending some money our way saying, hey, we want to push this message, cool beans. Because, I mean, they're certainly not writing for the sake of writing good stuff anymore. That's for fucking sure.
Which then makes you, it forces you to ask, okay, why are they doing this? Like, what's the goal?
No, exactly.
And I think indoctrinating children is at least part of it. I don't think that's the sole reason, but it's part of it.
Well, we also, too, these companies aren't really going to do stuff unless there is something of value for them in doing so. Because it's like, people are like, oh, they're doing it because it's the right thing. What has a company ever done, except for like a small company, like a mom and pop kind of thing? What has it, honestly, I will say, and even this is suspect, I would say. The only larger or large-ish company I've heard of doing something pretty altruistic, and that being said, it's still really under the control of the original CEO, as far as I know. Because especially once you have other people replacing your leadership roles, it all goes to hell. Starbucks. Because one of the things I studied back in my college days, and again, this could have changed, but
I think it has.
When we had studied it, the reason really why Starbucks coffee prices are so high is because about half of their budget goes to employee healthcare benefits. At the time, that was where they were focusing.
Maybe that changed.
Was like, hey, I want to make it so that whether you're a barista who just got hired or you're a manager who's been with us for 10 years, I don't want you worrying about your healthcare bills. So they literally, and again, this was at that time, this was probably back in like 2013, 14, I had studied this, so that could have changed. But at the time, they were putting about half of their budget into their employee benefits, because that was how the CEO wanted to run the company. But I guarantee you, once he steps down and someone else steps in, that's going to change. Even if they're like, you better promise me you won't do this. Okay, I promise. And then 10 years down the line, well, it'll be fine if we just tweak some numbers here, and whoops, there you go.
Well, that's I think that's the worry right now with Scholastic. The CEO just passed, and they just gave it to
the book company.
Yeah, Scholastic, and they're thinking like
I remember reading those books.
Yeah, everyone's read them. Like every school, they changed the hands now. The CEO is like an ex-lover of his as opposed to his kids.
Oh boy.
And like a lot of people are worried. Like it was a weird thing, but not worth mentioning. But back to the article here, they're talking about how so the private economy, essentially big pharma profits from transitioning, and to be sure, people experiencing gender dysphoria deserve compassionate care. But that's very different from enabling minors in a vulnerable state of mind in these sexually confusing times to irreversibly alter their bodies with the latest in medical and pharmaceutical science. And let's be honest, though, it's not the latest because, again, as we mentioned, Lupron's been in practice for years, and medroxyprogesterone acetate is a common drug used for gender-affirming therapy, but before that, we used it to chemically neuter sex offenders like rapists and other scumbags. So you're essentially taking a drug that's used for chemical neutering of scumbags and criminals. Your rapists, sex offenders, whatever. And you're now using this on kids. Another widely medication is Lupron, a controversial hormone blocker, which is as a puberty blocker now for transitioning children. Jeez. Lupron manufacturer Advi made $726 million on the drug alone in 2018. Advi has joined other major pharmaceutical companies in lobbying to keep drug prices high while virtue signaling about diversity and inclusion. This is why I like the New York Post, because they use the diversity and inclusion in the bullshit terms that they are. Like, it's not like, oh, look, diversity, and, like, they're not talking about actual diversity. They're using them in the way that that the corporations use them. They're bullshit terms that just thrown around with, because...
Well, it's the same thing. Well, you aren't against diversity, are you? I was like,
no, I'm against your interpretation of it. I like diversity when it was in the original Star Trek shows. TOS, TNG, you always look at the crews and their diverse cast. But
bottom
anyway.
line is, the pharmaceutical companies are definitely making bank off of this, which makes their claims that they're doing this for purely altruistic reasons, and there's no side effects, and nothing could possibly go wrong.
Well, it's the same thing with the vaccine, not to get too into that. But yeah, like the transgender people here, this part right here is just, I like the entire thing. Transgender people require lifelong medical support, making them ideal customers for the healthcare industry, and the well-documented phenomenon of peer contagion, kids pressuring each other into thinking they're all trans, ensures an endless supply of customers.
Well, I mean,
which is a little sadistic.
To touch on that too, I especially remember probably this was I don't know if it was more of a thing in the last decade or so, but I remember especially that you had everyone going, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I have this mental issue or that mental issue. And it's like, you have people just self-diagnosing because it was cool, because it had finally been, mental illnesses had finally been somewhat properly studied and going, hey, these are real, actual, legitimate things here. Depression isn't just you're feeling bummed out a bit. It's no, there is a actual chemical imbalance in your brain that is causing this. Just saying, hey, don't be sad to someone, that's not going to work because it's not their choice. It is a chemical imbalance in their brain. And the fact that these are known to be actual legitimate things, well, everyone wants to jump on board. Well, I'm depressed too. And I've got this issue too, or I've got.
When I was a kid, when I was a kid in school, everyone's like, everyone around me was always like, oh, I have ADHD. No, I have ADHD. It's like,
yeah, I actually got as a kid, I got I forgot what it was, if it was Ritalin or something else, but I was on medication probably up until like high school or so, and then my parents were like, hey, we're really not seeing you like acting up or doing anything else here. We're gonna go and stop giving you this stuff because there's no point to it. And I was like, yeah, no, that seems fine to me. And it's like actual ADHD. That's not something that just goes away or you grow out of. It is something that will stay with you for your life. And you saw a lot of stuff, especially in the early 90s and through to the 2000s, of pharmaceutical companies going, oh yeah, just go ahead and, telling local doctors and stuff, just go ahead and diagnose them with ADHD, just so they can get them on the medicine. Because
Again, as I said, when I was a kid, which was the late '90s, everyone was on it. Whether I had or have it or not, I don't freaking know. I never got tested for it, but like everyone around me was like had it, and it was almost like a freaking cool thing. Like it was, it was like and.
That being said, though,
at least for some kids, not like I say everyone. There's a bit of an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Where it's like,
if you're one of the cool kids, you
have it's like that's the thing. Like it's like you can make the argument like kids are pressuring each other, but then
no,
like that, I can totally believe it because you had kids doing that with other things. And hell, it doesn't even have to be like a medical thing at all. It can be with anything. Like kids will pressure each other into doing stuff.
Kids are assholes, honestly. But one thing I do want to note,
that's why they're called little rascals, because they're little rascals. They're little
one thing
monsters.
I do want to note, though, is that if you are trans, or you think you might be trans, stuff like that, that's great. That's your personal choice if you want to go and do that. However, bear in mind that especially if you do start taking like hormone therapy for that, that is a life-altering decision. Personally, I think that instead of going and just throwing all of these medicines out the door and just convincing kids to go and take them, I think we'd be much more benefited by the pharmaceutical companies looking to research and develop better ones, safer ones. Because
as opposed to reusing chemical castration drugs that are used on criminals.
Because it's like if you do that, there's no going back from it. There isn't. You're stuck there. And if you later on go, hey, whoops, I might have rushed into this, because also too, what kid hasn't rushed into a decision at some point? What adult hasn't rushed into a decision at some point?
Name a human being that's never rushed into just that has never had it. It's human nature.
So all I'm saying is like
sometimes you think before you act before you think. Sometimes
because it is a life-altering decision. And personally, I think the pharmaceutical companies would just be better off researching better drugs that could be, if you still wanted to, unknown, or at least not have permanent, non-reversible effects. But that's just my opinion. But take that for what you all. I just wanted to know, not against you if you want to be transgender. Just bear in mind, it is a huge decision to be making at what they're aiming for. Very young age.
No, we're talking about a decision that should be.
What major you want to go in college? If you want to go, do you even want to go to college? And yet they're throwing this on there as well. What gender do you want to be? And also too, one other thing on that too, with a lot of the talk of all of the, it's like you've got if you're straight, cool. If you're gay, so it's like you like the same gender, cool. If you're bi and you like both, cool. Pretty much outside of that, at that point, it's. Most of what I have seen of those is listing things you don't like or reinforcing the old, almost 1950s stereotypical gender roles we had back then, which we thought we had gotten rid of. So all I'm saying is that if just because you like guys or like girls or you like both or you like neither, if you're asexual, that's cool. That's completely your choice. That also doesn't necessarily make you trans. So just again, something to bear in mind, because you can have and also you have a split between romance and sex, and those won't always go together. Not to give anyone listening to this the talk here, hopefully. Not to lot of people, I ain't your dad, even though I tell some terrible jokes. You can go through that.
Son, I ain't your daddy, but I wouldn't put anyway.
Anyway, all I'm saying is do your fucking research. Look into this stupid shit. So
if you're gonna do any type of medical thing, do research. That's my thing. Whether it's a vaccine or this, it's like do research. Know what you're getting into before you do it.
Choice. Do not let anyone else, and also do not let, because one thing I'll note too for anyone that is younger who might be listening to this, your parents will sometimes go and try to push decisions on you. Sometimes that might be the right, air quotes, decision. Sometimes it won't be. Make your own decisions.
And ask. Sometimes just ask questions. Ask questions is the right thing to do.
Yeah, but it's like, do bear in mind, you might fuck up. You might make the wrong decision at some point, and that's perfectly fine. Just bear in mind, accept the consequences of it, work through them as best you can, and move forward with your life. because there ain't no human being out there who has not made a single mistake in their life. So if you ever do, like, you're looking back 2 years ago, 3, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, fuck, I should not have done whatever the thing was. That's fine. But it's done. You can't go back in time. Try to move forward as best you can from it. Learn from it. And importantly, learn from that and try to apply whatever went wrong there so that you can make better decisions in the future. But beyond that, move forward. Don't spend your entire life defining yourself from one mistake, because everyone makes mistakes. Learn from it, move on, look forward.
Also, and look, we're saying that we're saying that, to build on Camp's point here, we're saying, like, don't make this mistake of altering your body irreversibly that you might regret. Look, some people may want to do this, and that's what they want to do. That's fine. You do you. Just don't force it on other people and tell them to do it as well. That's not okay.
And don't let other people force it on you either. If they're like, you must be straight. You can't possibly be gay or bi or trans.
Do you really have anyone telling you that?
Don't let anyone else make your decisions for you. It's going to be, it's your life. Make your own decisions, but make sure they're informed decisions.
Right. And as Poger would always say, you do you, I do me, and we won't do each other, and we'll all live happily.
Ooh.
So apparently a physician scientist at Brown University, Lisa Littman, has illuminated the social phenomenon. Littman's research identified a pattern. Children tend to experience a rapid onset of gender dysphoria after being exposed to transgender ideology through peers or media. That's why we bring up the topic at all, is because it's being pushed through your political propaganda, also known as modern day entertainment. And
kids imitate people. You see that anywhere. They see. I mean, look at like the home videos people make when they go and they visit England, and they see the British soldiers in their funny little hats, and you got the kids marching alongside them because, like, hey, this is weird. This is interesting. I'm going to imitate that because I haven't seen that before. Kids do that. That's how they learn. That's part of how kids learn. But again, don't make life-altering decisions unless you've actually studied them up. You know what the side effects are. You know what the potential pros and cons and all of that shit are for it. Then make your decision. Yeah. And that doesn't mean 5 minutes of fucking Googling either.
It means legitimate research. Spend time on it. Make sure you're willing to do something. If you
haven't spent at least a week researching something, you shouldn't be making a life-altering decision on it.
Yep. Her study, though, elicited fierce backlash, which was ironic because her peer contagion is another way of describing the culture's success in normalizing these ideas to children. Critics essentially shouted, "That's not happening, and it's good that it is." And then the article continues saying, "It's happening." A New York PBS affiliate recently featured a drag queen who wanted children to to experience the magic of drag and to get a little practice in shaking their hips and shimmying their shoulders to know how we can feel fabulous inside our own bodies. Holy fuck!
I'm sorry, that's sexualizing children right there. That's
that's all sorts of wrong, man.
Like, it's like now that being said,
Cam, this is the worst part.
If kids want to go and like study dance or something like that, that's perfectly fine. However, that's very obviously sexualizing it, and that's I'm sorry.
It gets worse.
Child.
So it was targeted toward. That was targeted. I just read was targeted towards kids aged 3 to 8.
A kid age 3 can barely fucking walk, and at age 8, you're still like, what do you want to be when you grow up? A fire truck. Like, I'm sorry, you shouldn't. Like I said, if kids want to go and do dance or even take like a dance class, even at those ages, sure. However, if it's something sexualized, no, fuck off.
I think my sister did ballet at 8.
Sure. Well, again, if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. However,
no, my point, like, it was ballet. It wasn't like pole dancing.
Yeah, it wasn't like belly dancing. It's like, now that being said, if you want to start doing belly dancing at like late teen years, it's like, okay, sure, you're starting to grow into that kind of stuff, but even still
a little questionable. But yeah,
know what you're know what you're doing, know what you're looking into. Because like I said, at age 3, you can barely even fucking walk. And you're still falling over yourself at some points. Hell,
the article
adults still fall over themselves.
The article here quotes saying, "Keep kink in pride parades for our kids' sake," wrote Lauren Roello in a Washington Post op-ed in June. Roello cheerfully recounted showing scenes of men in leather thongs spanking each other playfully with floggers. What the
Again,
fuck?
I'm sorry, that's completely sexual. It's like, now that being said, again, if you want to be gay, that's perfectly fine.
It's like the intro to a porn film.
That's fine, because like for so long it was very much socially ostracized, and that if you were publicly gay, you could lose your job. Hell, you in some places of the world, even nowadays, you might be fucking killed for it. That being said,
especially in the other parts of the world. Though,
once you are doing anything sexually related, please keep that behind closed doors. Again, if you don't want, just for fuck's sake, people, there is still some amount of common decency here to be had.
No, in this article there is no common decency.
You don't see people having sex on public benches and shit out and about.
Don't
fucking do it.
You haven't been to New York lately.
Just for fuck's sake.
Look, jokes aside, although that wasn't really a joke, that does happen unfortunately. But the point is, yeah, whatever you do behind closed doors, that's your business. But this is not stuff you should be teaching to your kids.
When you are forcing other people into it, that's not right.
No, and you're not supposed to be teaching kids this shit.
For example, if I were to go up to someone who is gay and they're just, let's say they're just out and about enjoying their day, and I go up to them and with my girlfriend and while standing less than a foot away from them, I am kissing them, we're doing friends kissing, we're groping each other. It's like, hey, look, that's great and all, fuck off with that shit, okay? When you get to the point that you are blatantly shoving this in people's faces, that's not right. You do you, I do me, but when it gets to the point that you are essentially pushing shit onto other people, that's not right. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Again,
it gets worse.
We want to teach, young kids who barely know how to walk, how to sexually dance. Like, I'm sorry.
Why not? We're teaching. There's Marvel was talking a year or two ago. One of the Marvel writers was talking about doing a cartoon show targeted for ages 3 and 4 about all this same type of shit, except more about more representation about gay and shit like that. Where it's like, it's not representation though. It's not like, oh, here's a show.
At 3, you don't even know what gay is. You don't even know what sex is.
And you shouldn't.
I'm sorry.
No, you shouldn't.
That should not even be aimed at for kids until at minimum your early teens.
I would say maybe 12 or 13 is when that's when you should start teaching your kids about that.
You're kind of going to be like, hey, wow, such and such person looks kind of cute. I kind of like them. Ooh,
well, it's also because, think about it, kids.
You're going to be growing into those kinds of feelings.
This isn't always the case, but generally, girls start puberty at 8 and guys start puberty at 10. So by the time they're 12 and 13, both ages are kind of at that point where they're getting those types of feelings where you kind of have to tell them what it is, otherwise they don't know and it can cause problems.
What's going on in your head? But it's like, until then, like I said, it'd be like if you were expecting. It'd be like going up to an 8-year-old and trying to ask them about military strategy. They have no idea what a military even is. Like they have no concept or frame of reference for that because their brains.
Oh no, an 8-year-old, if they watch a lot of movies, they might.
Yeah.
I would say asking an 8-year-old about military strategy or whatever would not be deemed inappropriate. Talking to an 8-year-old about sex is.
But they would have a similar lack of frame of reference, generally speaking.
Right, you can say, hey kid, what would you like? Because look, when I was 8, we were doing laser tag and all these sorts of combat type stuff. So it's not.
Also, wasn't there recently a show that was on Netflix that was all about fucking kids
Adori Bowls or something.
Something there.
Yeah.
And
where it was literally pedophilia, the Netflix show.
What the fuck is this shit? and it kind of blew up into a similar conversation, and it's just like, what the fuck?
Yep. And obviously, also all these big name actors and stuff were part of that pedophile island with.
Yikes.
But anyway, this thing continues after the playful spanking with vloggers. These folks are members of our community celebrating who they are and what they like to do, Rowell told her kids by her own account. Essentially saying, like I get it, you want to tell your kids about, it's okay to be whoever you want to be, but that's something you tell them when they're older, not when they're fucking 3 to 8.
Yeah.
This messaging not only normalizes hypersexualized concepts to children, but exalts them as a positive good. Thinking or acting to the contrary is therefore cruel, cowardly, and conformist. The medical establishment agrees and enforces it. The American Medical Association has announced that sex should be removed as a legal designation on the public part of birth certificates. At medical schools nationwide, would-be physicians are berating their professors for still insisting on bodily nature of sex. You know how absurd that is?
Well, I mean, among other things, too, there are treatments that you have to know if the person is biologically, not just whatever you feel like that day, but biologically, are you a man or are you a woman? Because otherwise, you could fucking kill the person.
Yep.
You gotta know how to do this stuff, right? There are medical reasons for this.
Yeah, which is why in medical, which is why in all medical stuff they never use the term gender, they use the term sex, because like as time has gone on, gender is very much, especially nowadays, it's just like a term that's thrown around, every which way, whereas there's only two sexes.
What?
How dare you?
Yeah, there's doggy style, and there's no kidding. In one case, a Pakistani immigrant and devout Muslim named Ahmed checked his teenage autistic son into a Seattle hospital after he had struggled with severe depression. Due to a COVID-19 policy, Ahmed couldn't stay with his son. I actually know about this because in Columbia, here in New York, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, we actually just moved my grandfather out of the hospital there, but before he was in a week, and for the last 2 weeks, he was in the hospital in Columbia, and they only allow 2 visitors at a time, and you can only visit from the hours of, I think it was 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, or 6 in the afternoon, and it was all these rules were never in place beforehand. It's just due to COVID. Like you only have 2 visitors a day, and it was from 8 to 6. And it's because of COVID, because apparently the COVID-19 virus works on a clock.
Yes, of course.
Before that, you were able to visit whenever, because, for instance, with my grandfather, like, you want to be able to be with him at all times, right? Like, that's, whatever. It fucking sucks. But, yeah, so I can understand, he couldn't be with his son. That's a real thing that happens. In his absence, the hospital staff and social workers manipulated the boy into thinking his problems stemmed from being a girl trapped in a boy's body. Wow. Going old school there, huh?
That is a betrayal of your oath to do no harm.
Well, it's mental harm. It's okay.
Well, yeah, because you have someone who already has mental issues, and because that's one of the things too that you when what is it with memory, you can go and implant false memories into someone's head. This is a known thing in psychiatry and that kind of shit, because you can reference shit that I won't go too deep into that rabbit hole. But anyways, you are in a position of trust for this person, and if you are pushing treatment and other shit onto someone that they do not need, that they are not in there for, that they're not seeking help for, especially when you already have mental issues, that is a complete betrayal of your fucking oath to do no harm.
Well, first off, they should never have been talking to that child without his parent or guardian there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. That's just one of the problems here, and that's... Anyway, in Washington, though, minors can consent to gender-affirming therapy, which is when they, take these Luprons and hydroxy, medroxy, just
that step alone is a non-reversible step, correct?
Yeah. No, this
It's
is
like,
non-reversible.
so
You're
this is
literally
a
taking
minor-
chemical. You're taking chemical castration
It's chemically castration.
drugs.
So it's like, again, you can't have a tattoo at this age, but you can chemically castrate yourself. The fuck? Seriously? No one sees, like, none of these fucking idiots see a fucking problem with this. Yeah, you can't get that tattoo. Oh, you want to chemically castrate yourself? Okay, be back by 7.
You can't buy alcohol. You know that, like, when I was 18, my mother was always joking, like, oh, you know, my son can throw his life away at the military, but he can't drink. Despite that, I was drinking anyways. But it's like, you know, that. It's like, yeah, like she would joke around, but like the joke has merit there in that, yeah, like, you know, a kid can throw. When you're 18, you can join the military, but you can't, you know, you can't drink because you're not 21, at least in the States. In Israel, it's a little, I know in Israel it's a little different. You can drink at 18, but you know, it's like here you're saying at 13 they can do this, but they can't even join the military. Like you're kind of throwing your, I wouldn't say throwing your life away, but you're
changing your life.
You're changing your life irreversibly to the point where
you're taking a life-altering medical decision, which again, when
irreversible.
At your age, specifically by law, you are not allowed to do pretty much any other life-altering thing, whether that's tattoos, whether that's writing contracts, any of this other stuff. But there's a special exception for this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that should be illegal.
Yeah, and you know,
at least until I should say, it should be illegal at least until a drug or something is created to where there are very few substantial side effects and it can be reversed.
Honestly, for kids, no. If everything else should be for 18, why not this should be 18 too?
I would say once you actually do have shit to where it's like you could kind of bounce around and there's no side effects if you want to choose that.
Okay, so we're talking about like 200 years in the future.
I'm talking
based on the current level of development and progress, we're talking like 200 years in the future if things consistently go as they are.
If that was what the situation would be, I'd be like, okay, since there was no real chance of long-term issues, that'd be one thing. But when just by doing this, and again, this is just the kid saying, I want this, the kid can legally consent to it, the parents need not be informed at all about it, the parents have no say in it. Again, this is still at the age when a kid goes, you know, someone has a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Maybe a fire truck. And you're going, oh yeah, you can just chemically castrate yourself. What's that mean? I'll tell you when you're older. What?
Yeah. But in the article here, in Washington, minors can consent to this gender-affirming therapy at 13. Knowing social workers would conflate protest with abuse, Ahmed promised to play along with transitioning, collected his son, and fled the state with his family. Ahmed's son is now living happily in his natural sex as a boy. In other words, it's like, okay, they brainwashed the kid into agreeing to transition. He's then going to transition. Social workers would have protested in abuse, meaning that Ahmed was at risk of losing his son. And so he played along, and then just fled the state with his son. And he's like, okay, the son's happy now. Because
that's not the first time we've heard of social workers using their position to abuse others or blackmail others or threaten others into doing what they
No, because a lot of social workers, they see it as you're guilty until proven innocent, even if you're like a good parent. It's essentially, you have a child with you, like whether you're a good parent, bad parent, adoptive parent, you know, it's your actual kid or whatever. Essentially, you're a lot of these stories you always read, and you'll see in all these news outlets. It's always, you know, they're essentially like hunting for something wrong with you, like in something so minute that they can use it to then take the kid away from you.
Yeah, well, and just the fact that the mentality is, I am looking for something to target you with. That alone, I'm sorry, at that point you should be fucking fired from your job. Your job should be the well-being of the kid. That should not be making a witch hunt on the parents, and because also too, the more you affect the parents, the worse of a job, and they probably know this, the worse of a job they're going to do for the kid, because they already have how many other responsibilities you got? Your job, you got actually looking after the kid. That alone is stressful.
So Cam,
but now you got
you
some
say
other
this
asshole threatening you with all kinds of made up bullshit simply because they don't fucking like any parents out there.
So Cam,
honestly, it's fucking abuse.
Yeah. So the article then says because it's kind of true. In Pakistan, people flee from terrorists. In the United States, they flee from social workers. And then continues saying, in our brave new world, the culture of depravity preys on children. That culture insists that the state and the medical professionals revoke guardianship from the adults to whom kids were accidentally born to. The implications for this are terrifying because just think, okay, let's travel back in time to, say, the USSR, when that still existed, at least officially. And you have stuff like, okay, kid is... Say the kid's a genius, it's a 5-year-old kid, he's a genius or whatever. KGB come along, kid now belongs to the state. We're taking your child. That's essentially what the terrifying implication of this is.
You are not you as the parents, you have no claim to this child. We as the all-knowing, all-benevolent government will take your child away because we know best. How do you know best? You don't even know my fucking kid. You don't know me. You don't know anything. You haven't bothered to do anything here.
The futurist is here. He knows what's best for you. Don't question it.
And it's like, now that's, I will say, that's not to say social workers don't do good stuff in many cases, but at the same time, some of them are very clearly abusing their positions simply to go on whatever fucking power trip fantasies they have in their head. So like, if you have any kind of a job that involves assisting with other people, your focus needs to be those other people. It cannot be playing out whatever fucking fantasies you have in your head or whatever bullshit. And it's like, if you have issues in your past that mean you can't let go of that and it's affecting your job, you need to leave that job. Your focus should be help. If your job is to help other people, your focus should be helping other people, not playing out whatever revenge fantasy you have of, well, I couldn't do this to this person, but I'm going to go and hurt that person. I know they're bad, even though I can't prove it and I don't have evidence of it, but I know they're bad, so I'm going to hurt them real good. No, that just makes you a fucking horrible human being. Anyway.
Alright, so Victor's complaining that you're going in circles with this argument.
Yeah, we are. Next topic.
So next topic, I mean, I want to say that was the last topic, but this just in.
Oh, God.
No, it's actually, I want to say this is good news.
Don't lie to me.
Elizabeth Olsen voices support for Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow lawsuit against Disney. Saying, good for you, Scarlett.
Yeah, I guess that's good.
So, I mean, you can read the specifics. It's just talking about how the actresses, it just talked about the actresses' roles and playing Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, and how she's saying, yeah, good. It's good that she's doing it because, which lends credit to our theory, Cam, in that everyone at Disney's pretty much mistreated. At least a lot of their big name actors or actresses.
Well, do you know the story behind that lawsuit?
The what?
You know the story behind that lawsuit?
Yeah, so it was Scarlett Johansson suing.
Generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, but a lot of times the actor will, in their contract, is stipulated that they will get a percentage of the box office revenue,
right,
as their income. But Disney decided to release that movie in theaters, but also on Disney Plus.
At the same time,
people who are watching on Disney Plus aren't going to the theater. Therefore, a lot of the revenue that
Scarlett Johansson's revenue was based on how much money the movie made in box office from movie theaters.
Right. So
and when this deal was made, when the contract was written, it was before COVID-19. So, it's like, okay, everything's going to be normal. It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar box office, but it wasn't. And also the contract did say it was going to be exclusively in theaters. Again, this was made before COVID-19. So now that it's post, or I guess some steps, sort of post, they released it in Disney Plus streaming service alongside theaters, which definitely it definitely cut down on the profits from box office, which means that Scarlett Johansson got less money, and also implies that probably a lot of people that worked on the film got less money, assuming that their contracts were similarly made. And so she's suing them for breach of contract and pretty much for money. And obviously, as we know, this is not the first time Disney and Marvel both have broken contracts with their actors and creators.
Yeah, we already talked about that though.
And yeah, it's pretty much literally the article's just her talking about saying good for you, and then goes on talking about the lawsuit itself, which filed against Disney in July. Johansson's lawsuit argues that Disney's decision to employ a simultaneous release strategy for Black Widow intentionally reduced Marvel's breach of the induced Marvel's breach of contract of the agreement without justification in order to prevent Ms. Johansson from realizing the full benefit of her bargain with Marvel. The actress' salary was appearing, as we talked about. Yeah, so the movie made. She would have made. It cost her more than $50 million, according to the Wall Street Journal. When we covered the story a few weeks. So it's like, yeah, it was a huge. Again, this was made before COVID-19. How much money were these Disney Marvel movies making in theaters?
I mean,
multi-billion-dollar hits, right? Or at least they're like $2 billion hits or something. So in box office, and we're just talking like first week or first 2 weeks.
Just that movie. That's not talking about all of their other sources of income and everything else. There, it's like it would cost them nothing, even off of just the movie budget alone, to honor these contracts. And it's like, even if you want to say, well, the movie didn't make as much as they thought it would, doesn't matter. You honor your fucking contracts, and then it's like, okay, you write better contracts that are more in line with projected revenue down the road. You still honor what you fucking promised, because otherwise no one's going to trust you to do anything.
I like how I'm reading this from the comments from the Shang-Chi article, and this guy's doing the exact same thing that our chat was doing earlier, just listing all these really legendary martial artists that were in films.
Yeah. Heck, what about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Right. Where is the Amish superhero?
That would be interesting.
They're funny. All right, but I think that's it for this week's today's episode. Week's episode of Insert Name Here.
Insert rant here.
Pretty much. Change it. But yeah, I mean, I titled it "Their Representation is Exploitation" because it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe it is. They say representation. We need to have heroes that represent the audience, right? Or I don't even know what, right? They need to have heroes that look like the kids in the audience. That's what they use the term representation for. And at the end of the day, it's not. You have that. You've had that for years, decades. This isn't new. It's just your representation is, the woke version, right? The political correct version.
If they want to equally represent everyone, they're just going to go and have a thing that shows insert hero here, and it's just going to show a mirror.
Yeah. You go into the theater.
They call those video games. Sorry.
Yeah, right. But it's just they talk about it, representation, inclusion, diversity, but you look at what they're actually doing. They can say all these things, but then when you look at what they're actually doing, they're using oh look, we have a gay character. Having a character that's gay, the character being gay is not a character, it's a caricature. The character can be gay, but what's their character? That's not their being gay is not their character. That's just what they are.
It's like
or part of what they are, right? It's part of the character. That's not the character.
Not to delve too deep into video games here, but
yeah, that's for tomorrow.
When you go, but it's like in video games, and I completely lost my train of fucking thought. Oh well.
That you
Damn it, man,
essentially
don't
you
distract
are
me
yourself
already.
in the video game because you're playing you.
We pretty much already talked about this topic.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
anyway, that's it. Yeah, I think we've talked all of these points to death. What do you guys think? I already had a poll in the chat going this entire time, asking, do you agree with the title that their representation's exploitation? 25% of people have said yes, 25% of people said no, and 50% of people said I don't care.
That's right.
And honestly, I mean, look, at the end of the day, that's the thing is, these things aren't going to be successful, and they're going to keep making them though because they're not. Like, I can't, as you said, they're not doing this whether it's money or some other gain. There's a gain that doesn't necessarily have to be capital, and that's why they keep doing it.
Yep.
Of methods of the madness, as they.
Kind of definite madness to
I was
that.
about to say, and there's definitely madness here. So yeah, that's gonna end it though. That's really it. I mean, anything else?
Drink your school, stay and sleep, get 8 hours of drugs, and do your milk. Don't do milk.
Don't do. It's such a.
Who knows? You might end up doing something that costs you an arm and a leg. Yes, there's a reference there. Kudos for anyone who gets it. Anyways.
Apologize for the squeaky chair. Yep. So that. What was that?
I said squeak.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode 5 of Insert Name Here. Tune in next time tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern for Cast the Shadows, episode 37, where we're going to be talking about Star Citizen 3.14.1, the Free Fly, Cyberpunk DLC, and that's kind of it. There's some Riot game news, but it's like a one. But yeah, that's going to be it for this week's episode of Insert Here. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this live or catching this on the replay. I hope this was at the very least entertaining, not informative. And if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe if you haven't. If you have, make sure you're still subscribed, as YouTube likes to unsubscribe people. And if you want to help support us in a more personal way,
buy our merch, stock our social media. Wait, what?
Exactly. And on that note, I will use the experimental outro.
Now would be a very good time to leave.
Punch it.
Ah, sir.
What?